I'll just double check, see if it goes through there. See, now you got me hungry, thinking famine.
Yeah, I know it. Man,
It's like
it's just,
I got to
it
stock up. I
is
got
what
to
it
bulk
is.
up.
Yeah. Mm.
Yep, there we go, and we're live. All right, so it's working on Substack. That's good. So first off, as you know, this is always very informal here. So this is the Detective Lounge. We're just kind of hanging out as we normally do. Back in the old days, not lately. I haven't seen you like since I think it was Panama was the last time, right?
I don't know. I mean, you came down to Panama. That was very interesting. We learned a great deal. And then I think didn't we go to Thailand together, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that was after Panama. That's right.
Hmm.
And then Panama, the bridge blew up, the Thatcher Ferry Bridge, or had that fire that went out there with the
Oh,
yesterday, right?
right. Yeah, and you were right there where that happened. That Look at that. That's such an eventful little area right there. I mean, you could literally just stand in one spot in Panama and just tell a whole story, no matter where you're standing. I mean, that place, as you know, how much time did you spend in Panama? It was like a month or something, right?
Yeah,
And
2 months was nice.
and
Part of it
how long
Panama
was it?
City, and the rest it was 1.5, almost 2 months. But part of it was
I mean,
Panama, and then
that
you went down to Darien. You showed me down Darien, and then we went to
yeah.
those Banda Chiquita and those places.
I
And then we
mean,
went back to Panama City.
Panama seems like it's just a small country, but as you know, because you and I both we just study constantly, and Panama is one of those places that you go to, and it's just a flower that blooms every day.
The
Like
corn,
what couldn't we have 500 years of let's take control of Panama? 500 years of that. Well, it wasn't called Panama back then, was it? But I
no,
mean,
no,
it just gets the idea that, for instance, even Scotland lost its sovereignty because of Darien, right? Trying to build the Darien scheme. I've got a book on it here, which I haven't read yet, actually. And the Darien scheme, they tried to make their path between the seas in the 1690s, and they failed, and ended up those two missions. They lost over 2,000 people, and the English and the Spanish were crunching down on them. They didn't want because if the Scottish had make a path between the seas, it might not be the United Kingdom of England and Scotland. It might be the United Kingdom of Scotland and England. I think
yep,
it could have been a whole different world. Could have been
exactly.
Scottish in charge, and they almost pulled it off. And but the English and the Spanish and the mosquitoes were against the
The
Scots,
mosquitoes.
and as tough as the Scots were, they almost pulled it off, but almost only counts in hand grenades and horseshoes, right? And
Yeah. No
and
one's
so
tougher
they
than mosquitoes. It's the one
yeah, so they
universal
went
constant.
bankrupt. They went bankrupt. Scotland went bankrupt, and then
Yep.
they were absorbed by England in 1706 in the Articles of Union, and and that's it. I mean, just so many things like that in Panama. That's where the Spaniards collected their army to go attack in Peru, and that's where all that silver and gold, which is still an ongoing story in Peru. The same, and because the Indians in Darien at one point they're like, hey, the real metal, you're here for that metal. The real metal's down in this other place, like basically seven moons from here or something. You know what I mean? And they went down there. They collected the Spaniards collected their army in Darien, and they went down there, and the next thing you know, they're that huge silver mine, which affected the whole world. I've got one of our books here. Actually, it's a series of books about the Caspian, and it's written by an English guy, and it's in the 1700s. It's a series of books from the 1700s,
On the
and
Caspian Sea,
yeah, so over on the other
ooh,
side of the world. But he's
right
talking
above
about
Iran.
yeah, but he's talking about how because now because of all the stuff happening in South America, I kind of skipped over a little part, so all the silver
That's what we
flowing
do.
out of yeah,
Reassociate.
all the silver flowing
Strap
out
in,
of
folks.
South.
We're talking.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. This is the way it is with us. We'll do this for like 8 days straight. So all this when we get together, what's
Buckle up.
yeah. So, but all that silver started flowing from like South America, and it started going to like a lot of the silver was mined here in Japan, but Japan couldn't keep up.
Mm.
But that silver down in Peru and started flowing over to China. China ended up with a huge amount of silver, and so silver was a huge part of the Chinese, their economy rising up, quite significantly. And but anyway, in this book about the Caspian Sea, doing reconnaissance down there in the 1700s, it's very interesting, like hanging pirates and the whole works, man. They're down in
Mm.
Persia and dealing with the Russians and all this stuff. It's the same story. It's the same
Wow.
story. But anyway, this one guy, he goes off on a whole chapter. The author, he goes off for a whole chapter, upset about how the tea is flowing from China and going into England, and all the silver from England's flowing back to China. So it's this the silver, they're never even talking about gold. It's about silver, silver, silver. So they're getting all of our silver, and this tea is addictive. And he's talking about, he goes on and on and on, like a long report about how dangerous tea is for the health. And what's interesting is somebody just put
Hmm.
up something recently about how the same story about 1,000 years ago. So okay, so that's the 1700s. So all this silver flowing from England over to over to China, and the tea going back. So balance of trade. But there's interesting. Somebody published something recently about the same thing happened with the Romans. The Romans, their metal was going for Indian pepper, and so the Indian pepper was flowing
Oh.
back. It's the same story, man. It's just
Mhm.
1,000 years difference in different players, or if the English are different players, or the English different players than the Romans. I don't know. Anyway, but I have no
Derivative.
idea, man. I don't know
It's
what the
derivative.
real truth is. I keep trying to figure it out, and I keep like not knowing. But so the, but the, but the, but the, but that's an interesting report about how much of the metals. And so actually, I was trying to buy some Roman coins recently, because
Mm.
I think it's very important when you're learning about something, it's very important to be able to touch it and hold it if you can. You know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
super important. That's another good reason to have old books. It's very, very important. And weird thing is if you look at Roman coins, they're cheap, man. They're cheap. There's like
Mm.
they're almost, you can buy Roman silver and that sort of thing, not much higher than spot. Like it's
Wow.
not. And when you look at, you're like, well, these must be all fraudulent. Then obviously would be the next thing, but in reality, the Romans were making coins for like 1,000 years, and
Mm.
they found so many hordes of these silver and gold and bronze coins. There's like huge amounts out there. You can buy them by the pound or the kilo if you're a kilo person. You can go to eBay right now. You can buy all these Roman coins. Some of them are very expensive if they're from some very good condition, or they're from some they're a type not made for collectors who are trying to get the whole collections.
Mhm.
But what I'm getting to is they found a bunch of these old hordes over in India, right? So the
And in
Roman,
Indonesia, as far as Indonesia, that trade
yeah.
went a lot farther than we thought.
So those hordes were there, and that's those hordes were there where they were growing pepper. So in the pepper growing
Ah.
areas is where some of these hordes are found. Isn't that fascinating? How because the metals, let's say gold and silver, especially, and others like copper, but especially gold and silver. I mean, they're basically what we would call money today, which is really currency.
Mhm.
They're really just the conveyances of information, right? Is what they really are. They're conveyances of information. Like, okay, that and they're tokens, but we've all somehow come to the agreement that we will accept gold and silver tokens. But over a long period of time, the Roman denarius coin was, they kept cutting it and cutting it, and
Mm.
the next thing you know is the Indians stopped accepting it, right?
Mm.
Because because the Romans kept getting into wars and whatnot, and so they started adding other metals to the denarius, the silver coins, and then the silver coins over time, the Roman denarius, which you can buy cheaply on eBay right now, those things, they were basically inflated, and people stopped accepting them. That's one of the reasons that the Roman Empire fell. We do it by just
This sounds
printing more
familiar.
money. Yeah, exactly.
This sounds
There
oddly
really
familiar.
is. There's nothing new under the sun, man. I mean, balance of trade, the
Mm.
metals going for peppers in India 1,000 years ago or several hundred years ago. It's the, silver going for tea. And isn't it amazing?
Mhm.
It's the same story. It's truly nothing new under the sun. Now, the
Nope.
question is, we have to figure out what is that thing that's always the same, because that's the compass that we can use to make predictions that are accurate, like a
Mm.
compass. I think this thing will just keep pointing in that direction. That's one of the basically, actually, the compass is one of the technological advancements that allowed this huge global trade that we have now. Once they
Mhm.
could actually sail and leave the coast and didn't have to sail by braille, you're basically holding onto the shoreline to, you couldn't really go out of sight of shore very far. You're going to get, goodbye, and but once they had compasses and that they could trust at nighttime and that sort of thing, then that was one of the things that led to, like, Henry the Navigator and others starting to do large scale global trade. Just, technological advance called the compass, which you can make with a magnet and a needle and a piece of cork and some water, right?
Yep. I got a Boy Scout merit badge over that, I think, or Cub Scout merit badge.
Do you still have that needle?
No.
Brainwashing
Sadly.
works like that, Al. Brainwashing works like that. Basically, you rub one of our heads and we join your cult. That's why that's why you'll often hear me say some people could just be remagnetized almost instantly. You're like, okay, now you're facing north, and now you're facing south. But some people are made out of metal that doesn't magnetize quite as easily.
A little more insulated. That's true.
They have some more. They have some more inertia to being brainwashed. Although I think most people can be brainwashed with the application of going into the rape of the mind type stuff. But oh man, I got a message a couple days ago, Al, from an actual physicist, and it was a guy a guy I talked about some years ago, actually, and that he's still a hardcore jab pusher, and he,
Even
me,
today?
yeah, I mean, the message just came in. So I mean, and
Yeah.
he's a smart guy, and I think he's really good in his heart, but he's easy to brainwash because physics was what I've said many times. I was basically addicted to it, like Hunter Biden was addicted to crack for a long time. A huge, until I went into the army and started doing a lot of army stuff. But I mean, I just did physics, and so it was I'm very happy I did. But what I'm getting to is because why did I go physics so much? I thought that's where you could find the truth. I thought that's where I could find.
Ah,
That's where I thought I could find how things really work, and I could know. That's why I was never really interested in law, because I was like, law, that's just all made up. I mean, the laws, you just told me the law is different in Florida from Georgia from North Carolina. You know what I mean? Because we would travel through those states. I'm like, you mean the laws are different in this state than in our? Why is the law different in Arbondale, where you can park, as opposed to Winter Haven, where I grew up? This doesn't even make sense. I mean,
it's just
I need
opinion.
some physics. I was looking for the a way to find what the truth was with, I thought you could do that through mathematics and physics, and I think you can find some there, actually, but there's some limited use case. But it's also easy to brainwash people that are very, very smart. You just feed them bad numbers. That's all. You just put the information where you just tailor make it for their palate, and the next thing you know, they're like, well, I know how to read numbers the way other people can't read numbers, and they don't understand statistics the way I understand. That's what he was telling me, and which is, I totally get it, but doesn't understand just one layer deeper, not much, just a little bit deeper. Those numbers are fake. You know what I mean? The numbers are fake. You're really good with those fake numbers, man. You're the best
like
there
that.
is with those fake numbers.
It's like that Abbott and Costello skit. Remember I said you earlier? Like Gematria. I said, Gematria sounds good, but look at it. And it was that Abbott and Costello skit when they're showing that 13 times 70 is actually equal to a different number. Remember that? And they use math, and you look at it, and you're like, well, they're not wrong, but they're not right. Because
right.
you just fudge the numbers. And the smarter you are, the more you fall for it, because you're like, well, it seems like makes sense, but
that's what's weird. And in the book Rape of the Mind, which you used the Rape of the Mind trick to get me to read it, you just kept saying, did you read Rape of the Mind yet? I gave you Rape of the Mind. You have the book Rape of the Mind.
Hey, how's the Rape of the Mind going?
Stop it. I'm going to read it. So anyway, then I read it, because you used the application of 10,000 times. Finally, I'll read it. and I read it.
You just
and,
did to get me to shut up. It's like, yeah, I won't shut up. I'll read it just to shut him up.
and and then I was like, man, I should have read this years ago. And so now I'm constantly saying, read Rape of the Mind. But I've read a lot of books on brainwashing. It was just low on the stack, but now I recommend everybody read it. But why read Rape of the Mind? He goes through all these things. And
Mhm.
actually, Masako, when she returned to Japan at one point during the pandemic, she was reading Rape of the Mind, and she's like, "Hey, they're actually doing these things to me. Like I had to wear the bracelet at the airport, and they're
She went into
sleep
quarantine in the
deprivation,
hotel or something, and they were playing the music in the morning. They were doing everything right out of the book.
sleep deprivation, making you not trust yourself. No, you can't have metal utensils, because people can't be trusted with themselves. Rape of the Mind, right out of it. Anyway, I'm gonna gently ask him, probably 1,000, 2,000 times. Did you read Rape of the Mind yet? And because there are people out there that are still brainwashed, but are worth our effort to get them out of it. You know what I mean? They're not
Mhm.
all evil. I mean, and there's a side of me too that's very reluctant to just give up on good people. I have a hard time doing. You reach times when you're like, okay, that's enough. Go take the jab and die. And I'm like, I can't do that. That's not the right thing to do. Keep working on him. It's like try, try to get them to. I mean, because in those moments of frustration, you can just be like, okay, have fun, go die, but don't. You can't do that. You can't give up on people if they're good people. And so read Rape of the Mind, and don't just read it. You have to read it quietly and
Mhm.
study it. It's not one of those books that you're not just flipping pages to get to the end of it. You know, you have to just careful. You should see how Al reads a book. It's almost like maniacal Rain Man. And actually, there's a way of reading books.
Maniacal. Let me write this down. Maniacal Rain Man. That's. I am
But
Al
there
Maniacal
are
Rain Man. I'm putting that in my
there are
resume.
one of the first things that children should be taught, though, is how to read a book, right?
Mm.
And when I saw how you read a book, I'm like, obviously somebody taught Al how to read a book when he was a child. And when
My
I was
dad,
recently with,
Al Senior.
what's that?
Al Senior taught me how.
Yeah, I mean, your dad, taught you how to read a book. And
Mhm.
because there's a lot, there's reading and then there's studying. There's two different things. I'm not reading for entertainment. I'm not reading romance novels and all that crap. You know what I mean? I'm reading to try to figure stuff out. And the and when I saw how you mangle your books, I was like, somebody taught
Mangle.
him. Yeah,
Mangle.
yeah,
Mangle. This is a conversation. This is love. You see, this is tabbing. This
I
is
know
love.
it, man.
I'm
I
talking with
know
the
it.
author. I'm verifying
There,
information.
I
You
know
have to have a
there's one
discussion with the
side of me
author, right?
there's one side of me that says Al is giving a tattoo to his book, and then and there's another. It's like that man knows how to read a book, but there's actually
Oh,
a book called How to Read a Book. Have you ever seen that
oh,
book? It's an old book. It's called How to Read a Book. It's like, I don't know, this
no.
generations old, and basically you're doing that. So
Oh, okay.
and so you're actually doing the How to Read a Book. So your father probably read it, was probably what it was. But what I'm
Probably, yeah.
getting to is, like, when Masako and I, we just stayed with Catherine Austin Fitz for more than a month, in Netherlands,
Nice.
and Catherine was stacking stuff up for me to read, which I was reading because she's like you. If she makes a reading recommendation, it's solid stuff. But there's only so much I can. My bit rate is not fast enough to. And she,
Mm.
at one point, Catherine's, that was such a time. I wish we could go back and stay with her another month. But
Mm.
she at one point, she's like, you can speed read, can't you? I'm like, actually, no, I can't speed read. I don't know how to speed read because I actually can't, because that'd be
Mhm.
like speed eating. It's like, like there's only so much I can digest. And so I'm studying. I'm not really reading. I'm studying, and reading is a component of it. And as you know, as you're writing all the time by hand, that's
Mhm.
important. When you're writing those notes, you learn weirdly more by writing than you do by reading for some
Yep.
reason. And the old people knew that. People like
Mhm.
Benjamin Franklin knew it. I got his incredible books right here, 1806 books. I was reading those a couple years ago, and I keep them right here because I had them out the other
Mm.
day. He,
Oh, you got a
because he
Ben
talks.
Franklin 1806?
Yeah, he was already dead when these are his papers, though. This is,
Hmm.
yeah. I just keep them here because they're just
Oh,
they
wow.
got, so there are a lot of his papers. I found them at a bookstore in Japan couple of years ago, and yeah, these things they're works of art.
Oh,
You know,
man.
I keep this plastic on some of the books, which it makes it not really very pretty on the bookshelf. But there's
Protecting the
but
books.
yeah, I know it. I'm trying to figure out how to covering them up though. That makes them kind of shiny when I'm looking for them though, because sometimes I can't read the titles because it's reflecting and
Oh, I
stuff.
see.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Right.
But anyway, Ben Franklin, man, this guy is unbelievable. You should see some of the mathematics he was doing back then. You know, because there's a lot of people, and you see it in India. When I'm in India, you see people just playing with math,
Hmm.
and that's what a lot of people like Ben Franklin would do. You know, where you got people now that'll play video games or whatever. Ben Franklin and people like that, they'd just be like playing with math. They're just
Mm.
like trying to figure out, well, wait a minute, how do I do some weird geometry with numbers? And they eventually just come up with new math, right? That's how some of those, you know, great mathematicians who come from Indian villages, it's like randomly come from some village. You know what I mean? It's because they're playing with math. It's like, you know, it's like playing cricket. It's just and great mathematics comes from that because they come from out of the blue without training. So they're
Mhm.
not preloaded with, you know, previous thought. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's good.
You know
It's
me.
good. I mean, no, that's what we do. That's why it's the Detective Lounge. We just talk. It's good.
Yeah.
I can tell everybody, just buckle in. We're just going to talk.
Oh, let me read you this Revolutionary War letter. This is Benjamin Franklin. You know they had facsimiles back then, by the way. This is an actual 1806 book. I'm going to read you this letter in that beautiful handwriting. I wish I could
Wow.
handwrite like those guys, right? Let me read it.
Hmm.
This is in where's my spectacles? You know, did your grandparents call them spectacles?
Yes, they did. Because
That's
you're
what I
making a
call them now.
spectacle of yourself. I'm like, what? And then they
Making
hand
a
me the glass.
spectacle of yourself. Yeah, there we go.
My grandfather,
actually
my
says-
mother's father's one pun. That was it. That's all he'd say.
It actually says facsimile of the handwriting of Dr. Franklin. And here, let me pull that back out again so you can see it. So it actually says right on the top, and this is from 1806. This isn't new printing. It says
So we
fac.
took that word and we
F-A-C.
applied it to electronic transmission later. Huh.
Yeah, it says fac, F-A-C, and then a separate word, simile.
Ah.
Facsimile. There's a lot of
pretty
old
cool.
facsimiles in these books. So I said, could you read it? Is that good enough? Did it focus in?
Nah, it's still a
Oh,
little, it's
I'm
too
sorry.
small on the screen. Yeah.
Oh man, I could go zoom that in, but anyway, so it says facsimile of the handwriting of Dr. Franklin. And then it goes, this is Philadelphia, July 5th, 1775. And so July 5th, 1775.
Huh.
And it says to some guy, Mr. Shrayan or something, you are a member of parliament, to British parliament, basically. You are a member of parliament. So he's writing to the British because the Revolutionary War is about to kick off.
Mhm.
You are a member of parliament, and one of that majority which has doomed my country to destructions. Just I'm sorry, you have begun. Do you hear that noise outside? There's a truck
No.
going by. I'm sorry.
Oh.
You have begun to burn our towns and murder our people. Look upon your hands. They are stained with the blood of, and then he writes in your relations. He actually he didn't have the reverse arrow. He skipped the he writes in that he made an error there.
Oh, just
You want me to
little.
zoom that camera? Yeah, I can zoom the camera.
I can see it now. Yeah.
That's good. Okay. Yeah, so actually writes it in. So he said,
With the blood of your relations.
so
Okay.
you are look at your hands. Actually, exclamation mark. They are stained with the blood of your relations. And exclamation mark. You and I were long friends. You are now my let's see. You are now my wait a minute. What does it say? That one word. What does that say? I could read it before now. It's been a long time since I looked at it. See on the bottom there? You are now my enemy, I think. Or you are now, I don't think he said enemy.
Yes.
Can you read
Let me see if I can blow this up just a little bit more. I'm going to remove myself just for.
You could probably just web search it and see it typed out.
Yeah, I don't know. It's at my and. It's almost like it's like a line and then and.
Now I remember he said it very poetically. You are now my and oh, you're now my in anyway. I'll have to find it. He said and and let's see. You are my anyway. He said I think he said you are now my enemy or whatever, and I am yours. And he signs it. I am yours, Benjamin Franklin. Look at his signature.
Wow.
I think it says like you are my enemy and I am yours or something like that.
It's a beautiful signature, though.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. They used to write
when they threw the glove down. They did it with style.
And this says King's Printer, London. It goes on. Yeah, but in any case, but the these old letters were everything in style. And Ben Franklin, he was a trickster too. You know, he loved science, he loved physics and chemistry. He would do tricks. He would show people how he can still water. He can make the water. He can make the waves stop, because he knew the oil, the film of oil on water, an imperceptible level of little film of oil will make the waves stop. Right. So he would. So on the properly windy day, he could take people down to the lake or whatever, and he had his walking cane, and he had a little bit of oil in the bottom of the walking cane. He would stick it in the lake and go, and now I will still the waters. And the water would still. He's like, and the water actually does go still. You can actually look on YouTube. You can see where you can easily, with a tiny amount of oil, you can reduce greatly the number of ripples coming across the water. He would do things like that constantly. He was, he was big onto the lightning rod. I've researched that a lot, probably 30 years ago. Anyway, long time ago.
Yeah, pretty good. The other was the good reader, a contemporary of Ben Franklin was Thomas Jefferson, but he had a desk set up where he could get multiple books. And so he's cross-referencing them, right? So in other words, he's, what we do now with web tabs, we'll sit there on website, we'll put all the tabs on there so we can reference the information. He would do that with books, and he created a couple things. One is like a writing desk that he could take with him wherever, but the other one was a series where you could put up your books, and then he could rotate it physically so that he could open up multiple books to the passages and do comparison reading, right? And comparing these notes and that without having to jump back and forth. It was all right there in his system. So there's a couple different versions of like Jefferson study desks with that system in there because he needed to access multiple sites of information fast. So his brain was actually very good at looking at disparate information and trying to synthesize it.
What are those desks called? Because I actually bought in the past a bunch of those book stands to do things like that. I just came up with that on my own. I thought, but I got those Quran readers that they use for the Quran, and they're really nice. But it doesn't quite work for me because it doesn't. I got them from Uzbekistan, I think, and so they're but they didn't. It's hard to make the array good because I like to have multiple books open too.
Yep, let me see if I can look for it because there's two types. There's the Jefferson, there's the writing desk where you could take books and write everywhere, but then there's that big one where he put all those books on. Let's see if I can find what the actual name was on.
I learn better when I read on paper.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Read on, yeah.
Absolutely. Here we go. Monticello revolving book stand.
Monticello revolving book stand.
Yeah, they actually sell it at Monticello, his home there in Virginia. Let's see if I can pull it up here. Yeah, $649 floor stand for revolving stand. They got one you can put on the desk, and then they've got another one that'll rotate on a stand, freestanding or on a desk.
I could use both actually.
Let's see if I can pull it up here.
What I do have is 3 giant tables, and now I'm getting some other architecture set up to make the studio better so I can lay out maps, because I think it's better if we have a group of people. You know how you and I get together with Misako, and there you go. Look at that, man.
Yep. See, and then you rotate it. You got multiple books. You can put one above the other. You rotate like that. And there's two models. One's for the floor, and then one's for the desk.
I'm screenshotting that. Yeah. So now we just got to get high quality. Misako and I, we don't like anything around here that's plastic. So the fact that they are destroying the entire energy supply of the world and the ability to create plastics is, I'm trying to look at
wood craftsmen here shortly.
Yeah,
some carpenters
exactly.
back in.
Every mushroom cloud has a silver lining. I'm always trying to be positive. And but I mean, always look at the bright
side of life.
Yeah.
Doo-doo.
Monticello floor stand for the revolving. Yeah, look at that. That's what I need. Is that an actual like original or?
It's sold from Monticello, so that's his design. Because that's his estate is Monticello Estate when you go tour out there in Virginia, and then that was his system. Like, so there's one that's for the.
So does that rotate or?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah, you rotate it around. There's the one that goes on the desk, and he rotates it right. And you could put multiple books. There's one above the other, and then you put them like that. And he would rotate. And according to when you take the tour, according to them, they said the first thing he compared was he was comparing the Quran to the Torah to the Bible, right? So he wanted to look at all passages. Yeah. So he was comparing them, right? He's looking at comparative, religion, and he wanted to look at it, but he's going back and forth, right? He's like, okay, well, it appears in this, surah here, and it's in this parsha here, but over here it's in this, Genesis 5:7. Okay, which one? And he would go back and forth, and then he expanded that to other things where he could compare. And we do that today somewhat in the tabs in our browser, right? Okay, I got to line everything up, and I got multiple screens. You see a little bit of my stand here. I've got screens over here and here, and I just got to look. But it's better if it's in a book and you can look at it and compare it.
Look at these, man. You know how I am with old books. Look at this old Bible. I got 3 different old Bibles that are like this, right? And so when you're studying, you can. I don't usually pull them out because I don't want to be like Mr. Bible Thumper, but it's like, but when you pull them out and you, I mean, this is an old book.
Oh, beautiful.
It's got incredible maps and everything in here. But the thing is I don't like to be flipping back and forth. So I want to keep the page I'm on, and then I can go into a different Bible and flip through and look at other stuff that I was trying to figure. Because these are basically survival manuals, to me. This is like, this thing that you sent the other day about the stones in Japan, the tsunami stones.
Right. And the markers, like this was the high mark 600 years ago, and they literally marked it with a stone. This is where the high water mark for 600 years ago tsunami was. Don't build a village south of here.
Yeah, and the people at when they had the tsunami at Fukushima who had built villages beyond the stone, they were killed. And their entire villages were wiped out because they didn't pay. And that Japanese professor, what was his name? He's in the article. He says that people will forget after 3 generations. And I had read that many years ago when I was reading something about drug problems. For instance, in the United States, we had a huge drug problem in the 1800s, right? Like cocaine and all this different stuff was a huge problem in the United States in the 1800s. And they were selling it. You could go to a country store and buy, like a shotgun and a bottle of whiskey and some dynamite and, some cocaine, right? So, and have a good old July 4th. And so, I mean, and go ahead and throw me in some of those coffin nails while you're at it, Jim. It's like, I mean, so they were selling cocaine and all this stuff in the stores, right? And cannabis was big back then too, believe it or not. It's funny how these, more recent drug acts are like, you people, you're boomers, you don't know anything about drugs. You're like, shut up, man. You are on drugs if you think you're that you suddenly your new generation has discovered something. Guess what? These scientists were writing about that. It was in Scientific American. And actually, I found that article and I bought the old magazine. It was a Scientific American article from the 1980s. And I found it and I bought it. And I have it in one of the other library rooms here upstairs. And it talks about how people basically forget after about 3 generations. And which is what that, in other words, they're like, hey, cocaine's great for a while. And then they're like, wait a minute, this stuff's killing our families. This stuff's, destroying everybody. And then they're like, okay, that's illegal. And then for a while, it's like everybody knows cocaine, it should be bad, banned. And then the next thing you know, you got Eric Clapton, cocaine. It's popular again, right? It goes away and it comes back, and
Huh.
these are the cycles. These are rhythmic cycles, and that's what he talked about about those the tsunami stones, right? After three
Oh, yeah.
generations, because you haven't had a tsunami here in 100 years. You're like, oh well, there's those things are a thing of the past, and guess what? No, they're not. And so if it happened before, that's like that big old snow-covered mountain not far from me. You can see it from where we're at. Actually,
Fuji?
it's yeah. And
Hmm.
so you know, if you can see Mount Fuji, rule of thumb, you're too close, right?
Hmm.
We're too close. It's like, it's like, and so I mean, it's if you can see a volcano, if you can
Mhm.
see it, you're probably too close. It's like, and if it's this big in the distance, you're probably too close.
That's good. That's a good rule of thumb. If your thumb can cover it, it's still too close. It's
You're an EOD guy, didn't you guys teach rule of thumb when it
yeah, if
comes
you
to
can see it, it can
explosives?
hit you. Yeah, it's really simple, right? Yeah. If you can
Anything
see
you
it,
can
it can see you.
anything
Move.
you can see you.
Right.
It's like,
Move. Back
it's
up.
like,
Back up, Lieutenant. But that's the third generation is interesting because I was a long time ago, I was taught you could lose your morals after three generations if you unlock it from a super logical power, like God, right? And at third generation, then your morals go away because the first generation it's logged into the Bible, right? Going back to your Bible. So it's locked into the Bible, you have your rules. And then let's say you reject the Bible, but you go, but I'm still a good person. I can rationalize this. The next generation, right? That goes away from it.
mm,
But the third generation says, I'm not even going rational with this thing. I'm going to go hyper rational, which means whatever's for me, I don't care about anything outside of me, right? Only I matter. That's all that I can really rationalize as myself. And they said that process takes about three generations to do.
three generations. Where'd you get that from? The three generations.
That was actually it's a religious text that I have. It'll say, and it was talking about communism. The reason communism would destroy religion is because they knew within three generations, now they can get completely amoral people, right? In other words, there'll still be some grounding in the first and second generation, but by the third generation, now all those morals are torn away, and then that's when you truly have that group. And then by the same token, then they found out you could lose your communism in about three generations, right? That revolutionary fervor went away and it was a 3-generation cycle. So they were trying to use it on religion and then it got flipped on them. that third generation just rejected that revolutionary fervor from communism.
Oh,
That's fascinating. And that one you just said with the drug thing, it was 3 generations that they forget the moral lessons with even beyond that. That's interesting.
yeah. You just, and you always think another pattern is we always think, no, we're smarter than they are. It's like,
Nope.
I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing
Nope.
it.
I think it's demonstrable we're getting dumber with technology. We're literally dumber in some ways.
Our friend Soy over in
Yeah.
Thailand. So
Egg.
a couple
How's Egg
months
doing,
ago.
by the way? Side note.
Oh, good. A couple months ago, we were over there with Soy again, and or not a couple, just like last month, and because when we were coming back from Denmark, and we stopped in Thailand to see Soy and Kai and everybody, and Kai's doing martial arts and all that. Great.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah,
Muay Thai
yeah.
or
Karate. Yeah.
oh wow. Nice.
And and I gave him the camera one day, and I just let him go out and shoot. I gave him the really great Sony Alpha 1. That's what I used to do to the Afghan kids too. I'm like, here, this is how to use it. Go. So he went out and took all these great pictures. He's like 9 at the time, and now he's 10. So that was last year. And he came back. Kai, he's Thai. He's our friend's son. And he comes back with all these pictures, and Masako just took a couple days off, took all his photos, and made a book for him. Yeah. And said, "This is your first book. You've done your first book when you were 9 years old.
You're now published."
Yeah, and we got him 1 gram of gold. We got him 1 gram of gold to say, write down the price of gold at every birthday. I'm using what I learned from that Chinese guy I've told you about so many times. Basically, you have to touch it. You have to, you know what I mean, like. And because you want him to get, like, we were brainwashed away from gold. We were brainwashed away from silver. Even though it's like obviously the money, you know what I mean? It's like, so, we're trying to just, working to get him, thinking right with more solid behavior, Luckily his mother is very solid Buddhist, so that's good. But anyway, Soy, what was I going to say? we just came back through, and anyway, never mind. I'll think it up again. I interrupted you.
No, it's all right. And don't forget, remember, I was sitting there when you gave him the album because you had his handprint on it with the finger paints.
Oh yeah, you were there, and so yeah, Masako put that. Yeah, you were there, and we gave him that little gram of gold,
That
you
was
know,
a
and he
great
got all
idea.
excited.
So he
Yeah,
could see it published and everything. I think that's also something in modern society with the 3 generation, because you were raised by pretty much your grandfather raised you up. So you got that
grandparents.
transition, right? So you're technically a second generation, not a third generation. That's why you're closer to the old wisdom, right? And then I think
I directly, when you were just talking, I was thinking of my grandfather and grandmother. Actually, literally, when you were talking, I was thinking of them, because I'm like, my basis is definitely them, and I think about my grandfather and grandmother every day. You know, when it's like, and you know, how would this brief to God? You know, you know what I mean?
Yep. So and I think it's important, and we've gone away from that in the modern society. Kids aren't raised by their grandparents anymore. It used to be grandparents were very involved in raising the kids. You know, and like for my kids, my dad was always with my kids, right? I mean, solid. And I've got, in fact, you know, we got grandkids, you know, running around, and I've noticed though in a lot of the American families that I've seen here, they're not taking care of the kid, right? The grandparents are like in a different town sometimes. And so you visit grandmother on a holiday and then they go back home. So we'll talk about their grandparents as a visitation rather than they're helping take care of the kids almost every day, right? So you lose that continuity of knowledge, you lose the behavior, the modeling behavior that you'll get, and you lose a lot of those lessons if it goes through 2 generations, right? So I think it's very important for people to recognize the role of grandparents in the raising of the kids in that direct role, because they can transmit it and kind of shortcut that 3 generation rule, right? In other words, you're getting it straight from that 3rd generation. So then you become that 2nd generation, get closer there, and you avoid a lot of those pitfalls. Because in older societies, you see the grandparents really involved sometimes in raising the kids. In fact, sometimes the parents are working a lot, and the grandparents are sometimes the primary, you know, caregivers of them. And I think the kids that I've met that were raised by their grandparents, like you, they have a stronger moral basis than not, right? Because they've got that older wisdom, older souls, if that makes sense. And it's inculcated.
Oh yeah, and so many things I got from my grandparents. Like I remember my grandmother would say, one day you children will be buying bottled water from the store." I've told you that story many times. Every time I open a bottle of water now, and I'm like, Granny told me we were going to be doing it. I can't believe it.
He was right. I should have invested.
I remember I was like, Granny, we're never going to buy bottled water from the store. That's just crazy. Oh, you're saying your grandmother's crazy? Granny, you know, I wouldn't say that. I'm saying we're never going to buy water from the store. I mean,
and
where do you come up with this stuff?
Sorry, Grandma.
Everything she said turned out to be true. That's why I call her Granny Alex Jones now. I mean, it's like, I wish if I could go back in time, I would just keep a camera on them 24/7. It's like breakfast, here's why an iron skillet's better. Don't use any of that new Teflon stuff. All you need is a good skillet. And the older ones are the better ones, stuff like that. She had me out. I go out and go get me a rabbit, I go shoot a rabbit and clean it. And 5 minutes after giving the order, let's say 20 minutes after giving the order, get me a rabbit, it would be in the pan. You know what I mean? It's like, and I would go out and hunt it. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like when I went to Army survival school, I was like, I used to do this in the backyard, man. I mean,
it's old home
my grandfather taught me how to hunt, how to hunt gators and all that stuff. It was my grandfather taught me how to do it. And, it was my grandfather that taught me how to ambush a mole that's digging up the yard because Granny's upset because the moles are digging up the yard. You know how you get a mole? Those moles that pile up in the yard? You ever
they get
those
little mounds and stuff, yeah.
Oh, it's easy. When it's really dry and they start to pile up at a certain time of day, they're pushing the sand out. You just wait and they'll just occasionally pop up a little sand. It'll just pop up. You'll see it. It'll fly out. So you just wait and you watch them. And when you take the shotgun and you point right there. And as soon as the sand pops up, bam, and the mole flies out of the hole. Yeah, it works. It works.
Wow.
It flies. My grandfather's like, watch this. He'll come right out of that hole. And it's a single shot shotgun. Boom. And I go over and I was like, wow. So that's what they look like, So that's what makes Granny so upset. You know, what do we do? Feed it to the cat now? I mean, you know,
Yep. That's good. Yeah, like I said, a lot of wisdom back then, and we've kind of lost that common sense, the wisdom, and when they're in talking about the, we when our in our hubris nowadays, because we have all these cool toys, we think we're smarter, but we've become mentally dependent on the toys to with the illusion of being intelligent. And but you look at you have those books, what they did by hand and mechanical tools, they've got charts that are better than half the stuff we have now. And the depth that they
yeah,
would research something, they go really into the minutia, catalog it, organize that information, and then process it in massive
yeah,
tomes by hand, like the surveys of Panama, right? Just phenomenal work that the Navy survey teams did over years.
yeah.
And nowadays you get country reports and it's cut pasted from half open source, and you're like, what is this? Right? And you go
There's
back
a
to the
lot.
1870s and you're like, this is what I want. How come I'm getting this?
If you're gifted enough, if you're lucky enough to have really great grandparents, you are really lucky. You know what I mean? Like I was talking with Chris Martinson on the phone about maybe, I don't know, 3 years ago or something, and we're on the phone, and I said, "Oh, there's like, sounds like there's something in your yard," and he's like, he basically had we could get Chris on, maybe he'll remember. And I'm talking with him on the phone. He's like, "Wow, how'd you know?" I said, "Because a blue jay is doing an alarm call." You know, it, you know, that's
Uh,
how I used to catch, because
they have a
he's like,
snake?
"How'd you know it's a blue jay?" I'm like, "Brother, I used to catch snakes with blue jays. My grandfather taught me how to use snakes to catch a blue jay." And at some point, my dog and I, Snoopy was a female, but I named her Snoopy, and she was like this sort of border collie mix, because I like really smart dogs. And so
Mm,
Snoopy and I don't know if we trained the Blue Jays, or they trained us, or we trained each other. But the Blue Jays, when they see a snake, they give a certain call because they don't like
mm,
snakes, right? And my grandmother, she knew the call. She knew the snake call for the Blue Jays. Everybody knew it in our family. Okay, that call means that we're in Florida, man. There's snakes all the time. So
mm,
when you hear that call from the Blue Jays and you watch out, you see how the Blue Jays are arrayed. You're gonna see, oh, there's the snake, right? So my
mm,
grandmother, she had a hoe by the front door and a hoe by the back door, for
mm.
the garden and the snakes. And I didn't like killing snakes because I was pro snake and she's anti snake. And
Wait, you were
so
pro snake? Oh.
I had never killed snakes, man. I would say never. I did a couple times, but I didn't
Oh, but the
like
cute
killing.
mole you blow away with a shotgun, but a snake?
No, man, I didn't, except for the moles and the rabbits and stuff I would eat. But but my grandfather was like, you never kill anything that you're not going to eat. And I actually remember saying, "What? We're not going to eat these, are we?" He's like, "Well, no, but your grandmother." And I was like, "Anyway, whatever."
Your
I
grandmother will
didn't
eat me if we don't
I
clear them
didn't
out.
actually,
So
I actually didn't like killing the moles. Actually, I remember saying, "Can't we just like grab them somehow and throw them out there so they can make a hole over there?" You know what I mean? It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, why do we have to shoot them?
guy up the
Anyway,
street, we don't like him. Drop him off in his house.
my grandfather probably thought I was becoming the weak generation, and compared to him, I am, by far. But the but when the Blue Jays, when they do a certain call, there's a snake. And so
Mm,
my dog Snoopy, she knew that call, and I knew the call. My grandma. So
mm,
every time we heard that call, and I would usually be like studying or something, I would run out there, try to find that snake before my grandmother could get it.
mm.
And I would snatch that snake up and run off with it while my grandmother's like, "Michael," and I would throw the snake away somewhere and let it run off, slither
Be
off.
free, go.
But the thing is my dog Snoopy, she was the
Mm,
one. So it would go like this. I'm usually studying or something,
mm.
and rah, rah, rah. And then next thing you hear is Snoopy would find the snake first. She's smart. So she would be then barking. So I would actually go to Snoopy, because Snoopy would find the
Uh,
snake and she'd be barking at it. And then I would snag it up while the snake's looking at Snoopy. I'd be like, poof, and my grandmother racing. And sometimes my grandmother was just too fast and the snake was chopped up. So anyway, chopped snake.
well, it's good teamwork though. So you utilize everybody their strengths. You just had to run faster than
Yeah.
grandmother.
Oh, me and
Smart.
Snoopy and
That's a good
those Blue
team.
Jays. That's why you're not going to be sneaking up on those Embra Indians out in the jungle, man. They know every sound out there. They know those. I don't know if you noticed, but when we're going into the Darien Gap up the river, there are certain
Mhm.
birds that are telling people where we're at.
Mm,
And I said to the Indians one time, I was like, "What kind of birds are those?" Because they're telling us They're telling
Mm.
people, they're telling each other where we're at, or telling somebody, right? And they're like, oh yeah, I forgot the name of the bird. You remember yeah, yeah.
Jackson.
What's that?
Jackson, right? The guy was talking to us about the Yama and all that. Yamada man,
No, no.
different guy.
Anyway, but
Mm.
there are, if you know your birds, the birds tell
Mm.
you a lot. I mean, they communicate a great deal. I read a book on crows, man. That was fat, or not really crows. I read a book on corvids, and crows are, crows and ravens and that sort of, those things are super smart, and they are, anytime you see crows, if you see crows, there's people around, because crows don't live
Mm.
way out in the ultra jungle.
That's what
There's going to
that's
be
what
a
you
village
told me,
around.
and you taught me that, what, like 4 years ago, 5 years ago. You're like, every time you see a crow, there's humans somewhere, and I retained that, and we were up at the border in the middle of, all those little logging trails that go up, and there's nobody there. And then sure enough, we're seeing the crows up in the thing, and I'm like, hey, let's go that way. So we went to where we saw the crows flying around, and then there are people walking out there. There's no other sign except the crows, and it was way in the middle of nowhere in logging trails. So
Yeah,
that
those crows
pulled
will
up.
they'll show you. Yeah, the crows will show you. And
That was smart.
now imagine you're going up against Apache Indians or something who
Mm.
know everything, And remember, all those crows and all those in a real ecosystem that hasn't been destroyed, they're all communicating with each other. You can
Mhm.
tell by the sound of the change of the insects and that sort of thing. Bubble of silence, I've heard it called before, like when I was out in British tracking school. And there's so many things. I mean, every environment's different, so you have to get dialed into the people that live there. But that's the sort of stuff my grandfather would teach me all the time. I mean, he's like, this is the sort of tree you can make a toothbrush wish. We had one in the backyard, and you can chew it. And he had really great teeth all the way up until he died. I mean, he was old, and he was very healthy, but his teeth, he had his original teeth, never any fillings or anything like that.
Mm.
And
Wow.
everybody used to say, your grandfather's got the most beautiful teeth. It's because every day he was chewing that thing, and
Mm.
he would chew the sticks. And I found a scientific article about those things as well, right? And that's why wooden toothpicks, they have antibiotic properties if you've got the right ones, right? The wooden
Okay.
toothpicks. Yeah. But I mean, he would like, oh, this tree is good for that, and that tree is good for this, and only in this type of year that's tree. When Masako and I, we had these candles made. We had candles made because these are our backup candles for in case the electricity goes out. But we had them do it. We had them painted. This is this is a Haze candle, right? We had it
Mhm.
painted because we're using our survival lights as decorations. so so we so so we had a bunch of, we're trying to double duty everything, right? You want to
Mhm.
stack your functions, but this candle is made from a tree, right? It's called a Haze tree. It's in Japan. You see that hole in the bottom?
Yeah.
That's actually a chimney, right? So that chimney lets the air
Oh,
go up through the wick. And so this is a
wow.
handmade candle. And we went to the candle place twice. It's near Nagasaki. And we had dinner with the family who runs the place. And these candles, they leave no smoke. They don't leave
Whoa.
any silt. They don't any soot. They don't drip. So when this candle, when Masako and I have dinner, we light one or two candles at every dinner, right? And
Wow.
weirdly, the candles, it's like last night we lit two candles and had dinner together, right? So every night we have candlelight dinner if we're at home, right? And so,
Mm.
but the candles are perfectly timed for our meals, weirdly. And I mean, we got these dinner candles, and we just noticed at one point. Did you notice right about the time always take the last bite is when are we pacing ourselves to the candle, or they know what I mean?
Mm.
It's like perfect
Could be
timing, man.
subliminal. You don't even know it.
I wish I had them, but they're downstairs, or I'd show you one.
Mm.
But they're from the same people. It's from family business. But this comes
Mm.
from a tree called a Haze tree. What I was
How's
getting
it?
to is that tree. We have some of the best chopstick, or I would say the best chopsticks we have are made from this tree, right? So at this candle place, the trees are out back from the candle little shop, right? And it's just a family business, and he's got a bunch of these trees. But at certain times of the year, those trees are poisonous. And at other times of the year, they're
What?
really good for all kinds of stuff. So we got all kinds of products from those hosses. My grandfather was like that. He could say, "Well,
Mm.
this tree's good at this type of year, but at that type of year, don't touch it," or whatever. You know what I mean? And so
Wow.
when we were with the guy doing the hosset candles, he's showing us the trees, and he's like, "Yeah, at a certain type of year, we don't mess with the trees. At another
Mm.
type of year, it makes these. I mean, the chopsticks that we got from them were made by those." Because I love wooden chopsticks. I don't like plastic and any of that crap, and,
Mm.
and I don't like the metal ones either.
Mhm.
And I don't, and the best, the best ones are made out of the best chopsticks I've ever found are made out of the same tree that makes this candle.
Huh.
And every time we have dinner, every night that we have dinner, we burn a candle, which is a lot smaller, but it's from the same trees. And it's fascinating stuff. It's amazing what you can do when you have that old knowledge from this stuff.
Mhm.
These Japanese, they're unbelievable. I mean, still making hand. And by the way, he said you'll see it flickering, and he said that flickers because of the going up the
The
chimney
chimney
here.
action, it's got the
Yep.
kind of that
So you
chimney
can
action
see
with the
the candle
air
holders
going through.
like this. And he showed
Ah,
us how to light it, how to turn it out, and all that stuff. He's like, there's a way to do it. He's like, you have to be respectful from the flame and stuff. You don't just go like,
mm,
you don't do that. There's a way to do it, and then you kindly put it out,
mm,
respect the flame. It's like my grandfather. And he's like,
mm.
but he said when the air goes up here and you'll see it flicker, it flickers at the same frequency as starlight. That's what he
What?
said. He said that, yeah, the twinkling of starlight. He said it flickers. No, I haven't tested that, but but
Huh.
knowing Japan is probably. I was like, is this some kind of Fibonacci stuff going on here? The
It could
double oh
be.
007 stuff.
It could
You know,
be.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I mean, so that's why when you see we've got these beautiful candles around, but really we got them for if the electricity goes out, but we
Got
just
that
use
dual
them
use.
for decoration.
What's
That's what my
what's the
grandparents were. They tried to. There was beautiful stuff around, but it
dual
was a
use?
decoration. But it's really sometimes I'm using that to churn butter.
Yeah.
People that come over, they're like, "Hey, this is a nice antique thing. What is it?" And I'm like, "That's where I got these big muscles, man."
Who needs a gym membership? Because we've got chores to do. Oh, okay.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Well, it was interesting because I don't know if you saw the video. We're sent the video of Yukiko, doing her little peekaboo. 2 months old,
Yeah.
she's doing peekaboo. But behind her, you see those flower pots that are stacked. At the bottom of those are actually little heaters, little room heaters. And when you stack up, you have to be clay pots, right? Your actual clay
Oh.
terracotta pots. And you stack them. And then what you do is you take Crisco and you put wicks in the Crisco and you put that under there in a tin can. And you light those flames and it superheats it right here. And that chimney action keeps soot from coming out, right? Because that wind sounds
Oh.
like those candles. And you put those by your bed. You don't need central heating. And it'll actually heat up pretty good, right? And then that's, in Crisco, that stuff burns for like days almost. But we
Yeah.
kind of use those because you kind of get ready for it. So if there's a power outage or if there's something going on, it's more of your daily routine. It's not like all the stuff you got to do and you got to figure it out. So periodically, you just kind of work that into your normal daily routine using these things like you're doing with the candles. Except for
Yeah.
those are the heaters, right? So the house gets really cold here in the winter. Just light those little suckers up and you're good to go. But you normally make them, and like I said, you make it from Crisco, right? Put the wicks in
Yeah.
there, just little candle wicks. You put them in there. And it works
I bought
good.
a ton of Crisco as well, but it's in Texas. Unfortunately, I need to have some here. You're
Yeah,
right.
it's good. It's good for cooking, and like I said, it's basically the fuel for candles, and you can make little heating elements out of it. If you've got terracotta, it has to be the terracotta flower pots because they make some others with little synthetic. It doesn't work, but that's those little things that your grandparents teach you, right? Because they would use that to heat up the greenhouse without any money. Just get a bunch of you can do lard or you can do Crisco, put the wicks in there, put it out in there. They put it in the greenhouse to keep their plants going for the winter, the seedlings and all the stuff they had going. And they don't have to pay an electricity bill. Nana was nuts about that. Dad's mom was like, she would say, "Bunny, we'd go into a restaurant and we could never order a drink when you go out with my grandmother, right? What she would do is she would ask for a plate of lemons, which is free. You get the water and then they had the sugar on the table. She's like, look, we got lemonade for free. Boom. And then the rest of the sugar went in her purse. Like we never paid for a drink when we're out with her. She's like, why are you paying for lemonade? You can get it for free right here. I was like, okay. That's how she was. But she would make those little things and put it out in the greenhouse to keep it warm because she wouldn't bring an electric heater out there. She's like, that's a waste. Just do this. I was like,
That's
okay.
smart.
Yep.
Speaking of
knowledge.
Speaking of like you were mentioned pottery or earthenware, Masako's cousin on Okinawa, he's got a little, we went to the Haze guy shop. We love going to these little factories. You know what I mean?
Does he have a
it's just
website, or is that just you can only get it from his shop? Does he have a website for those things? Or?
he has a website, but I'd have to ask Masako what it is. In fact, she's ordering some more candles now because we and I'll give it to you, but it's in Japanese though. But and anyway, if you need something, we can translate. Or no, we don't need a translator. What am I talking about? So, and so yeah, and so but the okay, but the but actually, like he makes stuff like this. So we went. This is
wow.
That was the candle that, but her cousin makes like pottery dishes and stuff, right? So we were there a couple of weeks ago in Okinawa, and he's showing. So it took him 10 years of training to learn how to do that, right? So
Wow.
10 years, and so he did 10 years, and so we went into his shop. They've got their, like, I would say 3-year-old daughter in a crib there with the mother, not in the crib, but in the playpen. And the mother's in the playpen, Japanese child, very happy and learning stuff. And the mother's like teaching her. So that's actually my relatives. And so they've got the baby in the shop, and the whole electricity in the shop was just, the only energy they used was like a light, but they really, I don't think they had any lights on, and because they had the doors open, electric. But the only thing that they used energy for was actually firing the kilns. They use propane, but otherwise he goes out and he 10 years of training. He goes out and he collects the mud and he fires the plates, and he was showing us how they're stacked and there's a certain way to do it and all this stuff. So what we were there for is we were buying plates and dishes for Kenjiro House, right? That we're gonna make our education center. And the stuff that you're looking at, you're like, this stuff's got to be really, really expensive. But in reality, it's really, really not. It's really super inexpensive, and it's like real. It's got the nice, rough feel to it. It's not porcelain, but it's and what I'm getting to is a lot of these little factories, they're trying to get rid of them. They and but and so I asked him to, when we were in the shop, I said, how, basically I was saying you should get a lot more propane right now, because we're watching geostrategic stuff. And he's like, oh, there's only so much you can't get any more of the fire department. They limit how much you can have in Japan. Because if I were him, I'd be getting like 2 or 3 years worth of propane right now. You know what I mean? Because at a minimum, the price is going to skyrocket. And right now, if you get it right now, you can get it. We went through this with COVID, and we were stocking up hard, which was the wise thing to do. We're lucky we did not go into famine. It's clear that they were clearly trying to push us into famine, but I think we ended up being more resilient than they thought as a species, I think, is what actually happened. But now they're giving it another go. They've learned their lessons, and they this time, I mean, it's live fire. You look at what's happening right now. You know how many people, like let's say it, not a half a dozen, like a dozen people this morning have said, hey, there's a ceasefire. And I'm like, yeah, right. Okay. Seriously. And I was messaging back, I'll bet you there's missiles in the air right now as you're sending me this message. Lo and behold, there were. Right? There's no ceasefire. And for those who have really studied war the way that we do, you look at that, it almost feels like cheating to make these predictions, right? Like you made a prediction on the April 2nd thing, on a ground attack, and you came and you messaged it to me, and I'm like, well, that makes perfect sense. You were doing it on the myth cycle, and I was looking at it for some other reasons, and I'm like, and we both came to the same date, weirdly. And like I'm like, hey, and that was when I actually put it on X. I was like, I expected a ground attack, whatever I said on X, like, like right now, like, at any moment, like today or tonight or something. And sure enough, that's what's happened. Now they're making it sound like it's a CSAR mission, like a search and rescue for F-15 or whatever. But it actually obviously sounds like there was a lot more going on, and a lot more for that matter. And all this ceasefire, that's nonsense. When you understand what's actually going on, it looks very, very different than the normal analysis that you see, even by these guys that are well respected for their analysis. You look at it, you're like, the guy has no idea what's going on. They're basically trying to analyze every apple that falls off the tree. Okay, Trump said such and such, and they're trying to analyze the the significance of that apple falling off the tree. I'm like, okay, an apple fell off the tree, and okay, there's an apple tree here. There's going to be more apples fall off the tree, and why are these apple trees in rows? It's like why why what I mean, and why do all the apples go to a warehouse where other things, pears, show up in the same warehouse? And you start to say there's a huge architecture here. It's multi layers of architecture. This is all part of a larger dance. Sometimes you and I have joked. There's so many people that are, and we've been this. I've been this. A gear and a clock, and I don't know what time it is. I don't even know I'm a gear and a clock. I don't even know I'm a gear. I just think I got free will, and I'm just going around, and I've decided to do this, that, and the other. And next thing you know, I'm on a Green Beret A team, getting ready to parachute into Poland. Which at this point, I trained for 3 years to do that job. You think you could get me to do that job now? No way, right? It's because I realized what the game is about now. You're just cannon fodder. I remember one of my captains on one of the A teams. He said, "You're just cannon fodder." I was like, "What do you mean by that?" He started explaining it to me. The thing I remember, his name was Captain Holt, and he was a very smart guy, actually. So that's why when he started explaining it, I was like, why is my team leader even telling me that? But anyway, he's just like laying it out. He's like, well, this is what's really going on. That was one of my, sort of wake ups to it. Like, he's like, I still didn't understand it, but you're starting to at least get a finger hold on what's going on, like that, all the things that are going on now are part of a process war that's been going on for a long time. And there is no chance you're going to possibly understand it by looking at President Trump and listening to that idiot, right? He is nothing but a little gear in a giant machine. And the people that work for him are even smaller gears, right? It's like, and like micro gears. And so, and this is a process that's been going on since, it's in this actually, and I mean it. I mean that, and I mean it.
Yep.
I mean that literally, right? And these books right here, this is Roman history, right? It's like Marco Polo. Actually, one Japanese academic, Masako, and I spent quite a bit of time with him in Nagasaki. He said, actually, there's really no really objective evidence that we're not even sure if Marco Polo even existed. I'm like, really?
Oh, wow.
I'm like, and we had dinner with him several times. Here's the Domesday studies, man. That's interesting. Anyway, I'm sorry, you can't see it because it's out of the screen. But the the Romans and all this, it's all these things we're reading about. These guys already did all that stuff. When it comes to raising armies and making demographic warfare, and that guy fight this guy or this guy work with that guy, these guys were doing it. It's nothing new. How Green Berets? What are you supposed to do? Help raise up armies and bring them into war and stuff. These guys were doing it. There's a song when special forces. There's a song, Jesus. And by the way, for those who don't know, a special forces A team has 12 people on it, right? Has 12 people, has 10 enlisted people and 2 officers, right? And so now a warrant officer and anyway, so
disciple team deploy.
Yeah. But it's interesting because there's a song, Jesus was an A team leader. You can be one too. and there
okay.
Yeah, but in reality, when you understand how special forces works and you listen to the song, which is a cute song, you're like, actually, it is about doing that. Basically, you're spreading a different type of mustard seed, right? You are actually training people to do something in service to something bigger, right? So there's actually it's not completely, that's where it's very catchy, because you're like, actually this rhymes.
The pattern there. In fact, there's a kind of a side note on that one, because I've been looking at things a different way also, from other stuff. But it's probably one of the better. I've been reviewing, films, and then on the historical side. If you ever get a chance, I'll send you a link. But there's a film that some of your followers may like too, your audience. It's called Risen, and it was 2016, but it was about it from a different angle, from almost that special forces angle. it was from a Roman soldier's perspective about looking for, okay, the Pontius Pilate got a report that Jesus is out of the tomb. They think the followers took it. All right, you go investigate that and put this down before it becomes a rebellion. And so it's brilliantly made. It's actually not cheesy or kind of cardboard cutout. I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. And they had the Roman kind of the command structure and how they worked, and like a Roman perspective, like just calm this down before this thing gets out of hand. So you look at it and you're like, kind of feels like when you're in Iraq, right? It kind of gives you that feeling of, yeah, that's how these things work. Organizational structures and humans in those positions maintain kind of the same behaviors and the same drives and that sort of thing. And then I'm not going to ruin it, but literally this Roman soldier tracks him down, right? Counterinsurgency. They did a cordon search with the centurions and all that. I'm like, man, that's pretty, this is fascinating. But then what happens next is fascinating that you mentioned that, right? And so you look at it from, there's this SF or the Special Forces A team, which is the disciples in there, right? And the Romans are going there doing counterinsurgency. And this guy, the lead character, who's the investigator for the Romans, goes in and goes, huh. And then he starts going, wait a minute. And then he gets caught up in that. And you see that dynamic, and then they disperse, right? And then from there, they hit all over the globe. I mean, you've got one guy going to India, you got another guy going right up into Rome, another guy's going down to Ethiopia. And then from there it grows. So I'll send you the link, but I'd like to get your opinion of it from a historical standpoint. The character of the Roman is fictional, but being able to look at it from almost a modern perspective from the outside on that dynamic with those 12 guys and what they brought to that system and move out, what you just said is fascinating to me. So I'd like to get your opinion of that, and then we'll talk later on it, but it's pretty neat.
Yeah. Yeah. The Romans, they're so, Doug Casey loves to study the Romans, and it's interesting because I've got a lot, spending time and, looking at the Romans, getting some of their old coins. You can get them so cheap on eBay. Just get some of them. Like you can get for $50, you can get an authentic old Roman coin. You know what I mean? It's just amazing. And the kids need to touch that stuff. They need to hold it, right? And but it's interesting, where the word mile came from is a Roman soldier would take about 1,000 footsteps or his pace count for a mile, right? Mile, right? Mile. And maybe Miliakovsky. No, side topic. No. But as Al and I sort of joke like this, or at least I do, and then Al just politely laughs. But the mile comes from that, and it's interesting because the pace count. I don't know in EOD if you guys do pace count stuff and all that, pace. When I was in Special Forces, like
I got my Ranger beads around here somewhere. You had to do the pace count.
Exactly. And so we would keep parachute cord, and you would tie a knot for every 100 meters or whatever. And so, I mean, actually, after you've been in the Army for a while, you, especially the SF type people, or you're honestly, you'll be accidentally counting your pace, right? Like, hey, where's my parachute cord? Oh, shoot, I'm not even on a mission, right? So, but because you're out there training so much. But anyway, so I knew how many steps it took. It's called a pace count, how many steps it takes to go to 100 meters, right? So anyway, the Romans for 1,000 paces was a mile. So mile, 1,000, right? So actually, my pace count when I was in the Army, which I still remember, obviously, because I counted it so much, would be actually almost exactly a mile. My pace count would be as a Roman soldier, actually.
Wow.
So I mean, so it's fascinating to think that we're doing what they did, doing a pace count. I mean, your modern special operations dude or modern soldiers, period, infantry guys, they all know how to do a pace count. That's what those guys did. But I wonder who did it first. You know what I mean? It had to be.
Where did they pick it up from? They pick it up from the Gauls, or they pick it up from the Celts, or they pick it up from the Greeks? That's a good question.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question. Where'd that start? But yeah, there's a lot to learn of things that we don't know and we forget.
Oh, who was angry? Who was angry about the Roman silver going to India? That was Pliny, Pliny. Pliny the Elder.
Pliny the Elder.
Pliny the Elder died.
Pliny the Elder, right?
He died in like the year 73 or something like that, right?
And Pliny the Elder, okay.
Yeah, or Pliny. Pliny. I don't know which one of this, but so Pliny.
E-man.
Actually, Pliny was famously the way I am, so I'll just acknowledge that. In other words, he would go off on tangents. He was very famous for, like, he would be talking about something and just wander off, and people would be like, "There he goes again." It's like, but he actually wrote.
They draw those connections in, so that's a sign of genius, right? You bring it in.
Yeah, but Pliny was famous for just like running off on a tangent, which is interesting because he's attributed with doing the first encyclopedia, which is really interesting. In my first book,
Ooh.
Danger Close, I talk about how when I was a kid, we had an encyclopedia set at home, and I was like, I'm going to read the whole encyclopedia so I know everything in the world. That's why I was studying physics and stuff. So I remember I start with like I don't know aardvark or something, and so I'm in, and, you know, and so and then the thing is I'm like I'm gonna read all the encyclopedia, but then I end up like, wait a minute, aardvarks are from Africa. Okay, Africa. Okay, Africa. The Nile River's in Africa. Oh, where's in? There's a Nile. What's the biggest rivers in the world? Oh, back to A, Amazon. You know, it's like, you know, it's like, you know, it's like, you know,
15 rabbit
where's the
holes later.
Ganges River? You know, it's like, you know, like 7 years later, I'm like 8 pages into A. I mean, I never finished the encyclopedia. I didn't even get it through A because I was just doing what the Jefferson did. I was always had all the books, and you know, my dad would get home like, "All right, Michael, put them, just get them out of the floor," you know. You know, you know,
Yep.
isn't that wild though? Because Pliny the Elder was the first attributed to making an encyclopedia that I know of. And then I
Mm.
show up, you know, trying to read his basically child, the encyclopedia. You know, man, I've got the 1910, 1911 encyclopedias right over here.
Oh,
They're unbelievable. Oh, yeah. Let me show you.
American or British?
Here, I'll show you.
Mm.
The Britannica. Here, let's see if Major Payne is right. Let's see. Major Payne said, if you want sympathy, it's in the. Here we go. Remember the movie Major Payne?
Yeah.
That's a great movie. So, and he's like, you know, he's raising up these kids, and you know, the kids are wanting sympathy, and he's like, if you want sympathy, you can find it in the dictionary between shit and syphilis. I'm like, that's perfect.
Exactly.
And but this is old Encyclopedia Britannica, right, from 1910, 1911, because this is said to be. I've got the whole set, man. I found them in really great condition. Look at this,
Mm.
man, leathered bound. This is real. These are originals. And
Nice.
the thing
Nice.
is I was in a friend's house in Texas, and she had, you know, as soon as I see old books, I run over to them,
Mm.
and I picked out the F, and I was looking for famine, right? And so
Mhm.
because I was trying to see what they say about famine in 1910, 1911. This is the 11th edition. It's the 11th edition of Encyclopedia Britannica, 11th, right?
Wow.
And I read that, and in the 11th edition of Encyclopedia Britannica, what they say about famine is really accurate, actually. It's super well written as well, but
Mm.
they're inaccurate in their conclusions. Because keep in
Mm.
mind, this is when they're actually working on the Panama Canal. It's not finished yet. They're working on it, and they're doing all kinds of. Trains are getting bigger and faster. You've studied trains a lot. Ships are getting bigger and faster. Crop production's getting bigger and better, and that sort of thing. And so they're like, so we probably kind of reached the end of famine, because and they accurately said there's always enough food in the world. It's just it's over there, and the people that need it over here because something happened, like a volcano or something, right? And so, but now with the faster ships, more trains, and that sort of thing, we should be able to get rid of famines. But one of the
Mm.
things they didn't take into account, and I need to read it again. It
The
was that, you
human,
know,
the human element of famine, the
it's just a
human-made
weapon.
famine.
It's a straight up
Yep.
weapon. So anyway, I researched the 11th edition after I found one in her house. And
Mm.
so I found somebody that's an expert in old encyclopedia. You know how I am. I'm like you are. I'm like, somebody out there's got to be an expert in encyclopedia, and I found one. He's like,
Mm.
actually, the 11th the 11th edition is widely known as the best edition that they had, that was
Oh.
ever made, because it wasn't woke yet. And
Oh.
by the 14th edition, I think it was starting to get woke. But actually, he said that the 11th and the 12th, I think, were still actually quite good as well, and the 13th were quite good as well. But I think he said by the 14th edition, it started to go woke. And
Oh.
anyway, so I said, if you see a set of those, would you please tell me? And I got these for like, I think it was less than $1,000. I'm like, you got to be joking. It's the entire
Mm.
set, and they're in great condition. And so, I mean, I spent a lot of time in these things. These are, you know, these old encyclopedia or something else.
Mm.
Yeah,
They are.
yeah.
It's good stuff. And that's the problem is when they move things to digitization, a lot of stuff doesn't get put in there, right? In other words, we're losing a lot of that knowledge that
Oh,
was
are
in
we
the older.
live right now?
We are. We are.
Oh, because somebody said, how many years would be considered a generation? Hey, Black Wolf. Well, that's an interesting question that I have asked many times since I was a kid. Uh, and Al, I mean, it depends. Actually, I think that
Mm.
that idea changes with space and time. With different people, will consider it a generation, a different time frame. Right now, I would say it's 30 years. I don't know what's a generation. What's a generation considered now?
That's a good question. I think you're right about 30, roughly 30 years, because you're looking at the adulthood, right? When you reach adulthood, you've had kids before they become adults themselves. So, typically in the older societies, you begin, having kids about 15, 16 years old, older societies. And then, it takes them about 15. So that's about 30 years. So yeah, that's roughly about right. From what I've
Hmm.
seen, you're right.
But that has changed, and with space and time. I remember
Mhm.
specifically. Well, actually, I've got the Encyclopedia Britannica right here. I could probably
Let's take a
find
look.
out.
We'll
Let's
have
do
to
it.
research that.
It's interesting though. When you get old books, you need to get old dictionaries. So you have to
Mhm.
get old dictionaries with those old books, and you need to get You need to get books on from different time periods on weights and measures. So I have a huge section on weights and measures
Oh,
globally, and a lot of things. We let me look up because that's a
hmm,
question. Let me go find G and see if it's even in there.
excellent. And then while he's doing that, when he gets back and we look that up, while he's going to go back and answer that question, I'm going to go run and grab. There's another set of kind of encyclopedias that's good to have, and that is we call it the Army Green Books. So if you're looking at military history, the U.S. Army Historical Office used to do a fantastic job about. It was just after World War II to up to about Vietnam, and they made basically the encyclopedia of the military, specific operations and things like that, with these huge green books. And the amount of detail and information in them is just phenomenal. They don't have anything even close to that nowadays. Which we were talking about before. Some of the older books have a lot more information and details in them than modern books that really kind of reduce things. Hey, why you go into
Well,
that one?
wait.
I'm gonna
As
run
you
and
were
grab it.
saying that,
Oh,
I was walking past this set,
ooh,
and so I pulled that off the shelf too. This is the Smithsonian Institution War Background Studies. So these are
oh,
different. Yeah, I found them, man. I got them all. and
ooh.
so it's the origin of the Far Eastern Civilization, a brief handbook by Carl Whitting Bishop, and this is from 1942.
Wow.
And so it's got here the evolution of nations. That's 1942. The peoples of the Soviet Union, peoples of the Philippines, natural history background of camouflage. This isn't all about country studies, although I've got some of those here as well. Some of the country studies right here. But
Oh,
Polynesian explorers of the Pacific, Siam, land of free men. Look at this. Check it out.
oh, Siam, and that was in
Yep.
42.
Yep. Wait,
Oh,
this one's 1943. Yep.
43, and it said Siam, land of free men.
Yep.
That's
Land of
that's
free men.
extremely interesting in that one. I wanna I
Yep.
wanna get a copy of that.
Yeah, man. I found them. And I was like, boom. These are going to be
Mm,
wonderful for homework. The native peoples of New Guinea, poisonous reptiles of the world. These are more war studies for World War II. Egypt and the Suez Canal.
mm.
This is actually, yeah. Here's another one. Are wars inevitable? Well, that's a good question. Alaska, America's continental frontier outpost, 1943.
Wow.
Anyway, but actually, I've got more that are on war studies, more like what you were talking about. I just happened to be walking past those when I heard you
Nice.
talking.
Well, but while you're
Let
doing
me
that, I'm
look
gonna
up.
grab it.
Wait,
But while you're
Black
looking
Wolf
that up, I'm
asked
gonna
about.
answer this question. Fox Terrence. Oh, I see what he did there with this thing. He said, I didn't know Michael had a show. Actually, this Michael has his own channel on Substack. If you get a chance, I'm going to call him FT. Fuck tyrants. I like that. That's very clever. He has a channel on YouTube and Substack. It'll be Michael Yon, one word. So if you go over to Substack, look up Michael Yon. He has a Substack channel. It's really excellent for going into a lot of the current events, but he brings in a very strong historical background so that he can analyze with a good paradigm. The other one is over on YouTube. He's got a channel. He's pretty good about, I think, what is it, every week almost you do a video update, or every twice a week you'll do a video update on what's going on and discuss a lot of this stuff. So this isn't Michael's channel, but he hangs out here in the Detective Lounge a lot, and we communicate a lot normally. But he has his own channel with some really great information on it. Definitely go take a look at it and sign up both on YouTube and Substack. And then he's got an X channel too, which I think is it Michael Yon 1776? Let me go take a look real quick.
Oh, on Substack? No, it's Big Honey.
Big Honey on Substack. On
YouTube.
That's right.
Here's a generation under. Actually, I'm looking. I was looking for generation, but I ran across. Yeah, here it is.
Oh, just like that. That was quick.
Yeah, let me make sure if this is. Yeah, generation. Here it is. Latin, generare. Wait, to beget, procreate, genus, stock, race. The act of procreation. Oh, they're talking about not how long is a generation. I'll just get one of the. Here we go. As applied to the result of procreation, a generation is used of the offspring of the same parents, taken as one degree in descent from a common ancestor, or widely of the body of living persons born at or near the same time. Thus, the word is also used as the age or period of a generation, usually taken as about 30 years or 3 generations to a century. So there you go. We were right, about 30 years and about, or 3 generations to 1 century. As a term in biology or physiology, it keeps going on about other stuff, but yeah, about 30 years.
So you're right.
So
30 years.
So and that comes from the 19, the 11th edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica. This looks new, but it's actually just very old and very well maintained.
Over 100 years old right there. Look at that. 120 years old just about.
Yeah. And look at the condition it's in. It's really, somebody really took good care of these. And and they landed in a place where they will be loved and passed on. Yeah.
And by passed on, you mean to the Historical Detective Agency, correct?
Wait, here, look, here's the Kiel Canal. Right. Wow. Wait,
you were just there.
Yeah, it was actually Kiel Canal up in northern Germany or southern Denmark.
Well, that's interesting. So in 1906, they call it the Kiel Canal versus the was it the Kaiser Wilhelm Canal?
Oh yeah, that's right. Didn't they call it the Kaiser Wilhelm to begin with, or something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Canals, man. I tell you what. The more you study,
that's the British version of the Encyclopedia Britannica.
I got a big section on canals, not just Panama Canal or Suez, but just canals in general. I mean, the United States built I think 4,000 miles of canals in the 1800s, right? Is that right?
Well, the Erie Canal and the ability to be able to raise and lower the water, which allowed Panama to actually work, right? The ability to be able to do that, the flooding to raise it up and go down in elevation was a huge technology. So if you as a culture created canals and had the ability to be able to do engineering with waterworks, that puts you up. And going back to Rome, remember they were able to do not just aqueducts, but they were able to do floodplains and fill in, and they had this tremendous amount of engineering with water that elevated them up. Egypt as well, right? So you can look at these civilizations that are able to not just engineering normally, but engineering with water integrating into that, and their civilization just seems to get a little bit higher, and that's what we had, like Erie Canal and all that, and then we're able to bring that to like I said, Panama. That made it work a little bit better.
Yeah, King Rama IX in Thailand, he was big man that studied water. So he put a lot of effort into that. It's one of the reasons Thailand became so resilient. But you were mentioning something else about that as well. Anyway, you were going to get a book. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. I was just going to go grab the green books. But people should know about them. It's the Army Green Books. But over here, I just want to share this with this guy real quick. So this is Michael's page over on X. So take a look on there, and then from that you can also you'll see some of his live streams on there. And if you go to Substack, he has the same on Substack. and you'll be able to see a lot of his information on there for Michael. Let's see if we can go to that one. Hang on just a second. Yeah. So check those out. And then occasionally we'll do a Detective Lounge here with that. So we'll stop sharing. And then the other one that most people don't realize is also in the Persian Empire, both the Assyrian, the Babylonian, and later the Persian Empire. There was a tremendous amount of ability to engineer with water in that area, and that got passed. And what amount that interchanged with Rome and what they picked up, because Rome was very good about integrating a lot of the other technologies around them into their own empire and then refining it, right, making it a little different, a little more efficient in how they were able to build it and be able to synthesize some of those things. So people forget, just like Michael was talking about, there was a trade going on between Rome all the way into not just India, but it went past India into, they found gigantic amounts of Roman deposits of Roman coins and records of trade all the way into Indonesia. So just south of Java in Indonesia, I think it was near Bali. They had those. They found Roman coin, big, large Roman coins, not just one or two that somebody gets as a souvenir or a token lucky trinket and, wanders around. And that's how it ends up somewhere. They found some in America, but it's like one or two, and it looks as if it was passed on and passed on. But they found large deposits of Roman coin all into Southeast Asia. And it's that spice trade that would go through the Vedic civilization over to what became the Persian civilization and then up into Rome. So the amount of contact and trade between what we now consider the East and the West, between Rome and Persia and then the lands beyond Persia, was actually very vibrant, very robust. And it wasn't just the trade. So you trade information, you trade ideas, you trade that sort of technical knowledge. So a lot of the things that started out, let's say in Babylon, they're famous for the Hanging Gardens, right? But you had to look at things of where that information crosses over and then intersects with Rome, and then they incorporated themselves into aqueducts and into everything from the Roman amphitheater. They could flood it and do naval battles in there, right? That's a tremendous amount of engineering skill back in the day before you have computers and mechanized items. So I think a lot of that is missed in that interchange. That we've kind of lost the ability to realize there's a lot around you that you can incorporate in. And then that interchange of ideas travels a lot further than we actually think of. And so I'm kind of looking forward to a lot of people are becoming more interested in the Near East as far as the history, and then to go beyond that and to kind of break free of that, the eastern end of the Mediterranean is where our history ends. No, it continues on beyond that. And there's a lot of interchange. And then Rome, it had its physical borders that it managed, right? This is what Rome ruled around the Mediterranean, but their actual reach was a little bit farther. What they traded with, what they engaged with, what they learned from, that extended further than that. And the Greeks as well extended even further beyond that. So there was a lot of interchange that people kind of forget about. And then the exchange of ideas, and then that history, like Michael was saying, I mean, nothing new under the sun. We're looking at things today and we're still fighting along those same lines, right? Like, in other words, the geography kind of dictates how these things kind of work out eventually. So it's kind of interesting on that. So did you, where'd that go? Yeah. So what I wanted to do actually on this one is the green books. I'm going to go get that actually real fast. I want to show the green books.
Yeah, I want to see it.
Studying history.
I want to see this.
Those are fantastic. So I'm gonna let you go solo here just real quick, Mike. You have the mic and I'll be back in like 2 minutes.
All right. Here, I'll talk about these candles again. All right. Let's see. Brett Weinstein just sent a message. These wars are so, got everybody really obviously focused because these are life-changing for everybody. I had these other candles made as well. This is from this is just a stock candle from this family candle company near Nagasaki, but this is just the same candle, but it's unpainted. So we got a bunch of these just for just in case the lights go out. But look at this candle holder. These are awesome. See, they're beautiful, but we just get things that are actually decorations, but they're there it goes. So you just lift that up and put it in and release it, and it holds the candle, and it allows the air to go underneath on the in the pipe, so that the chimney for the candle. And actually, I got, and this might upset some people. I understand how it could upset some people, but I got a candle painted Bitcoin. Because when Bitcoin I think finally melts down, or the average person realizes that it's very useful. I get it. I got first Bitcoin I had in 2013, but I think when the average person realizes, if you put a lot of your wealth into that thing, a lot of people got rich off of it, but it's a clear trap. It's obviously a clear trap. And speaking of clear traps, and we get these candles made, since we're going to get them painted anyway. Sometimes we get them just as I see Bitcoin melting down eventually. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. I got one made like Ukraine
Did it melt
flag.
Bitcoin down? I thought the whole point was you couldn't melt them down.
No. I'm sorry. They don't
It's a
melt
joke.
down. They actually, these candles just evaporate. But
Oh, I see. I see.
but actually, the reason that the Ukrainian flag is like this is because this part is the wheat, and this is the sky, right? The gold and blue. That's why the colors are like that. They have, I mean, Ukraine is famous for the amount of food that it has, and famine, right? A lot of more. It's interesting in 2020 when I started warning about famine, and I really thought famine might come then. I mean, there was a high probability. I think we just ended up being more resilient, so they're giving it another go now. But many people would say, don't you understand? The United States is the world's biggest food exporter. I'm like, yeah. Actually, before I speak, I will have studied quite a lot, right? And Ukraine is a huge bread basket. Or if you look at Hunan province in China, I mean, they had huge Henan. They had huge famine there, and that was a bread basket. When I was in Iraq, one of the provinces that creates the most food is called Diyala province. I spent a lot of time in Diyala. In Diyala, the people were having problems with food. Why were they having problems? Because the Shia, well, for a while it was the Sunni controlling it, then it was the Shia controlling it. And I was on a mission with a striker unit that went and just basically did a combat mission to the giant warehouse on the outskirts of Baghdad and said, "You're going to release the food." Because they were holding it back because the Shia had then taken it over, and they're like, they were going to starve the Sunni. And our guys were like, nope. And the reason I was on that mission was because the command, it was actually General Petraeus. General Petraeus said, he ordered that mission. It was a very significant helicopters, the whole works, and then Apaches flying low and all that. And so I'm in there, and I made video, and the commander, he said, you're either going to be a hero because you're going to release the food today, or you see all these vehicles and the helicopters flying by and everything, or we're going to take the food and we're going to arrest you right on television. And that's why we brought this journalist. Of course, I'm not a journalist, but anyway, that's why I'm taking photos and videos. He said, because that, and I was like, so that's why I'm here, huh? So I'm here basically, and that's when I realized why I was invited. I was invited to witness that how you're either going to be a hero or you're going to be flex cuffed, right? And they released the food. It was like 80 as I recall, semi trucks full of food, and I published on it. So some of these photos and videos were actually online. But what I was getting to is, but Diyala province, where that food was going to, which was not far away, is the breadbasket of Iraq, and they were having food problems. Just because you're a breadbasket like Ireland doesn't mean you won't go into huge famine like Ireland,
Exactly.
right? It's almost like irrelevant. It's like education level seems to be irrelevant to whether you'll be brainwashed or not. It seems to be actually irrelevant.
Well, remember, Juice Merloon, Rape of the Mind, said actually the more educated you are, the easier you are in some cases to rape your mind. Remember that?
Yeah.
He was surprised. The first thing that hit him was these doctors in occupied Holland, the Netherlands, right? The doctors and the psychologists, the masters and the PhDs, they were the ones that were flipping first. And he says sometimes the simple guys, right, the labor worker guys, he just goes to church every Sunday. He's like, right? He was the hardest to try to brainwash, right? Because he's very, very easy in his in his worldview.
Actually, yeah, because I told you that physicist that sent that letter, and he's very hard. He's like very, very like, I understand the math. You know who actually because in the beginning of the pandemic, I thought it was real. I thought the pandemic was real for the first few months.
We all did.
So certainly for the first part of 2020, I was like, wow, this is very serious. In fact, I was one of the people saying, hey, why aren't we locking down? Right. And so I was in the middle of Hong Kong, and then the next thing you know, this is going on. And so the transition period was like, you know, 1-0. Now here we go to a whole different thing going on. And then eventually sometime and you were telling me, because I was like, yeah, I really don't want to jump on an airplane to fly back to the US right now. You're like, no, it's safe right now. I'm like, you're not the one getting on the airplane. And then at some point I'm like, Al's right. What kind of coward am I being? You know, I get shot at for years and I'm don't get screw it. I get on the airplane and I go back and I'm out with Antifa up around you. Actually, remember I went out with those Antifa riots and they're
You're down there in Portland. You were like ground zero.
Oh yeah, I was out in the middle with those clowns again. And anyway, you know, and then they're back in action in January 6th and out in the Darien Gap and all this crap. You know what I mean? So we see a lot of things. But for a period, I thought it was real. But as soon as I woke up to it, I don't look at it, fool me once, shame on you, and fool me twice, shame on me. I look at it as, you know, fool me once, shame on me, and you're my enemy, and fool me twice, shame on me, and really shame on me. I mean, if I let you fool me once, it's just shame on me. I'm not making any excuses. You got me in the beginning. For a while I thought it was a real pandemic, but when it came to the jab, no way. But Joost Meerloo, Rape of the Mind, everybody should read Rape of the Mind. And Rape of the Mind is very important. And it was you and Tim Lynch. Tim Lynch is a retired Marine infantry officer I was in Afghanistan with, running around when he was already out of the Marines. And I called Tim. He was in Texas. And and Tim, like you were just saying, the simple guys that are more just like down in it. I said, you know, we're talking about this. He's like, think about it. You know, he talks like Gary the Cannibal. Think about it. If this pandemic is that bad, if it's that real, if it's real, why are the bums still on the streets? Why are there bums everywhere sleeping on the street? And as soon as he said that, I was like, uh-oh, there's farmer wisdom right there. That's like common sense. You know,
look at the bones.
Basically hitting me with common Marine Corps infantry sense is what it came down to. And I'm like, I resonated with that. And I'm like, that's a solid point, because that's something I can, you know, I don't want to put my hands on it because it's probably got typhus, but the point is that's that common sense that immediately, like some of the things that you were saying, and then Tim Lynch with that, and I'm like, yeah, this is we're off target here. You know what I mean? It's like, but then the thing is it started to become more and more obvious, like with the death jab. I mean, it's a clear weapon, right? Clear. Anyway, you went to get some books and I'm rambling.
No, that's right. And you're right. And a lot of people, I think there's two problems with it. One is we try to correct it with that, you know, the Think Like a Detective course, and it's basically become an evidence-based thinker versus an emotional-based thinker, right? In other words, you can be easily fooled by people trying to play on your emotions. If they're trying to make an emotional argument, all right, you're selling me something, right? Show me the fact here. Let's go forward with this. And also the second thing is, though, is part of that is you look at not necessarily, you know, words can be camouflage, right? So in other words, politicians are fantastic at it, right? Propagandists, they're great at using words. I'm going to watch what you do, right? So a good investigator is like, okay, I hear what you're telling me, but I'm going to separate that, but I'm going to watch your behavior, your nonverbal, your paraverbals. What are you actually doing, right? So that's another thing, is that they weren't looking at the actions, right? Like the targeting thing in Iran in the beginning of this thing, you know, I think we talked about it, was like, okay, well, here's their stated goal, but none of those targets are lining up to what they told us the goals were, right?
Right.
They're opposite. And now we got two separate targeting packages, one from Israel and one from us. And sometimes they're at cross purposes. Okay, really, what's going on, right? You can say all the things you want in press briefings, but I want to know what targets you're hitting, when you're hitting them, how hard you're hitting them. That's what counts, right? The words are just, okay, blah, blah, blah. Let's look where you're hitting. That's the key part. And people don't do that anymore, it doesn't seem, especially in corporate disinformation outlets. They're not looking at the evidence, right? They're just looking at emotions. Okay, that was a great speech. We're going to put that up there. Yeah, but what'd he do? You know, what's the evidence on the ground? Let's see what we got and go from that. But these are the books.
Yeah, one more thing. Anyway, go ahead.
No, it's good. And part of it is the like we were talking, there's a knowledge set of sometimes the older generation had more of a knowledge set than we do, right? So we're more dependent upon feedback, right? The Skinner boxes, right? Which is a cell phone. I don't even know where mine is. Here we go. Skinner boxes, right? That's all this is a Skinner box. It's designed to give me a dopamine hit in response to just doing this, but it literally shuts down your brain, right? Dr. Jeff Hansen is great for showing how this really screws up kids. If you put a kid on a tablet or device before they're 4 or sometimes 6 years old, they're done. They're smooth brains at that point, right? So you've got to read, interact, work these things out, and then that builds up a basis of cognition that can look at things like behavior and realize that what you're telling me doesn't match what you're doing. I'm going to watch what you're doing, right? But most humans, especially in a media-saturated society, will see the emotion, the music, the visual, and they'll ignore the facts. They'll follow that, right? Like the dancing and the TikTok and all that. They're going to follow that versus what's the evidence? What am I actually looking at?
Okay, let me finish that off, because you're right.
Go for it,
I do need to say it, because what you're saying is, like, one thing that you and I have talked about many times. If you feel the emotion of surprise, not a surprise that you stepped on a snake or something, but surprise, like, I didn't expect that. Why that doesn't make any sense. And and constantly you see these analysts right now going, I'm surprised. Why is Trump doing that? I'm surprised. Why is Bibi doing that? I'm surprised. I'm surprised. One of the things that was surprising me in the beginning of the pandemic was, wait a minute, if it's really real, why are they letting people they're not coming directly from China to the US maybe, but they're going through another country first and then coming to the US. And they're doing the same to Australia. Like, they were the Hong Kong students when I was with the Hong Kongers, because I was in Hong Kong before they kicked me out. They're like, hey, it's like a joke, because the students are still returning to Australia, but they're not allowed to go straight to Australia. So they just go to Indonesia first, and they take a quick vacation, and then they go to Australia. It's like, and so at first I'm surprised. I'm like, okay, I feel the emotion of surprise. What is wrong with this picture? The equation doesn't add up. And well, it turned out it was just a big fraud. I mean, that's what it was, right?
Yep.
Anytime you feel that emotion of surprise, that's a major alarm system to go, okay. I mean, that's a gift from God, is that feeling. And the number one advisor that any person has, number one advisor, is your intuition. Number one, a well-nourished and well-trained and well listened to and give it good sleep intuition. That's your number one advisor.
Yep, exactly. Exactly right. So yeah, there was a lot that just disconnected. And even with now, there's a lot of disconnects between the rhetoric and the reality. And people aren't looking at it. And part of it's also the background information, right? What you're taught about how the world works. And nobody's taught about oligarch systems. Nobody's talked about organizational structure dictates outcome. They don't look at organizational structures. They look at the label and think that's it. I don't care about the label. I mean, I'll take that into a consideration, but I want to know that organizational structure, right? How does it operate? How's it funded? Who's in it? What power does it actually have? That determines what it's going to be working as, right? So, looking at a shark and then putting a label on it, said, no, it's a goldfish. Don't worry. Wait a minute. It's got teeth. It's pretty big. Its mouth is bigger than I am, right? It's built this way. That ain't no goldfish, right?
Yeah.
Something different here.
Yeah.
So
yeah, if you want to know what a factory does, you don't look at all the inputs that are going into it. You go to the back dock where they're loading up the finished product and see what they're loading on the truck. I mean,
exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
you got all these ingredients going in, and then some magic happens under those walls, and what gets put on the truck and distributed. That's what we need to know. And we see what's coming from the whole ecosystems, and they're causing destruction of planet Earth. This fire across the Middle East now, which is the same fire that you see blowing up stuff in the Baltic and Nord Stream and all these different things. That fire is causing global famine. They want to do a population reduction.
Oh yeah, it's very clear. It's very clear, and people understand, just because even if the spigot is turned on, in many places that crop season is gone. When you plant, you've got a narrow window to get those seeds in the ground with the molecules of the fertilizer. This fertilizer is there, right? And you got a short window of the planting season, right? It's not 12 months, 24 hours a day you can plant. This is your window to get those seeds in the ground and the fertilizer in there to have the crop ready, right? It's not, you can start it whenever. You start it when Mother Nature says you can start it. And some places that window is that much, and they've missed that window. Those are gone. Right. And that's going to cascade, because that million people that plot was going to feed, they're not going to get that food from there. Where are they going to go? They got to get it from somewhere else. That strains the system in a series of dominoes that's already strained by, reduction of LNG and phosphates and all that. So, I mean, this cascading effect, people aren't realizing, this interdependence that's been created, that organizational structure is just when COVID, those disruptions, just a little disruption can collapse that system for a very long time, even when the pump is turned back on. And so, the damage is done. It's
Yeah.
markets bet on it. Oh, the markets have gone up. That's horse racing. They're betting on horses. That's just nuts.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean an outcome. So a little quick before we go back in that, but I do want to go back to that. But I want to show you these books before I forget. So this goes back to a lot of these books. I've got 3 generations of books here. Not like you. I don't have all that cool library behind you. By the way, put that in a trust. Just put that in a trust and insure it, because that thing's beautiful. But this is an example of, for example, military history that we literally don't have that today. This is just the military folks out of the Tennessee in the Civil War, right? So it's huge. It goes into every single unit, the commanders, the people in the unit, the rosters of every unit, and then their war battles, right, during the Civil War. When they mustered, where they mustered, who their officers were voted in first, second, third. This guy died of disease, where they were from. This is like everything, the personnel records, and you name it, from the Civil War for one state, and it's detailed. I imagine doing that now. Look. Is there a book I can go to for Washington State in Grenada? That doesn't even happen. Like for Grenada, like a couple weeks, it just doesn't exist. But they used to put that care into getting information and putting it back in.
What's the name of that?
Oh, this one. This is the Civil War Tennessee. They call it Tennessee Roll of Honor. And many states would do this. States would authorize and collect all the information they could on like every unit. So you got little daguerreotypes of the people in every unit. There's the little portrait.
Oh, yeah.
They put them in there. This unit was mustered in, Shelby County on this date, and they voted this guy as the officer.
Shelby County.
Yeah, Memphis, Tennessee. So, and they go into it.
Yeah.
And then every single unit, then their war record, what they did. There's the 11th Tennessee, but I mean that level of detail, you can't get that nowadays. There's Company F, every company in the regiment, they've got everybody, the rolls, the musters, you name it, it's in there, and we don't have that. We haven't had that for a while, right?
Actually, you know what? Now, like the SIGACs, the Significant Action Reports, I was going to use those, and the military said I could use them for writing about Mosul.
Where are they?
They erased them all. Yeah, because I asked Carilla, he was the battalion commander. Then he ended up being CENTCOM. I asked him, I said, "Hey, I've been waiting for the SIGACs," and he's like, "You're not going to believe this." I'm like, "Uh-oh," and they deleted them all. I'm like, "What?"
Mm-hmm.
They did that. That's historical. Like, I can't. No, there's no chance that they could have done that, right? I mean, why would they do that? Are they trying to cover up war crimes? Not that I was seeing any, but you know what I mean? What were they trying to do? I didn't see any war crimes, but what I'm saying is that why would they do that?
From my perspective, because we would look at stuff. In other words, when I was literally trying to archive my unit as we were going through it, right, both times. And the thing that I was running into was, for example, right here, this is all paper, right? This is a clerk writing and typing, right? And then he stores it somewhere, right? And it's on paper. As long as that paper physically has its integrity, right, stored somewhere, I can go retrieve it. The problem with the Gulf War is technology killed us. It's on first it was a 5.5-inch disc, then it was a 3.5-inch disc. Right now, if I have a 3.5-inch disc, what computer can I put a 3.5-inch disc in? I got to find an old computer to put it in. And then back in the day, we were doing things like Lotus Notes, right? It's a software and a program on Windows 93 or Windows 95 or Windows 3.11 in some cases. And so that software to read that medium of 3.5-inch disc, that doesn't exist anymore. You have to find an old computer with that operating system that matches the disc, and you have to guess what's on that disc, and then put it in there and then retrieve the format in a format you can read, because it's all just zeros and ones. It has to get translated into something I can read on the screen. So the our cleverness. Ooh, look, we're electronic now. I can't read this stuff anymore. It's gone. If you find a disc, what's on the disc? I can't look at the disc and tell what's on it. I have to put it in the computer, and the computer has to figure out the translation. So we literally out clevered ourselves from recording information, whereas if we'd have just written it down or typed it on physical medium on paper, we'd have been great. Now we say this now, but there's probably 2,000 years ago, they're like, "What, you're writing on paper? You should put it on stone. Paper's going to go away if you don't put it on stone."
Right.
It won't be there, right? So,
oh yeah, and they're right. I mean, they're absolutely right.
It's got to be written in stone if you really want it permanent.
Yeah, that's why I started writing a book at one time called Written in Stone. Actually, I never finished it. I ended up doing all kinds of other stuff. But yeah, I see all these I see these medals of honor all over the place. I mean, not medals of honor, rolls of honor. There's quite a lot of the books available. Yeah.
And the details are great. And so it's weird. You can study the Civil War and you're going to get a ton more information than you would about if you wanted to study what the heck happened in the last year of the Afghanistan withdrawal.
Yeah.
It's not there. You can't get it. The other thing is laziness. Like one of the things, I went to the Pritzker Military Library in Chicago when I was out visiting Sargis one time, and I wanted to go visit the military history there. It was phenomenal. They had a display up front of unit logbooks. Remember that? You used to get the green book. You go in, and you write the logbook.
Yeah.
And they had World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and then Gulf War or Operation Iraqi Freedom. So they had these 4 books opened up. And World War I, the penmanship was pretty cool. It's like Ben Franklin, really neat penmanship. The numbers are there, very organized.
Yeah.
World War II looks like we shifted to block letters. How you're taught to write in the military. That's pretty good.
Right.
Vietnam was about the same. It got to Operation Iraqi Freedom, and it looked like a kid drew it with his left hand in a crayon while he was having a seizure, and it was ridiculous. I'm like, oh yeah, we don't teach guys.
Speaking of which,
I
know a man who had gotten a lot of money in California to make like a wall of honor, like that 442nd Regimental Combat Team, monument
Nice,
that you and I went to in Los Angeles. Yeah, the Nice. Yep. Well, he was making something like that for the Iraq and Afghan veterans, right? And his name was Dale, and we were in contact quite a lot of times because I would send his stuff out because he was trying to help the veterans, and he said, this is really frustrating. The hardest part of making this monument, which is not at any cost to the military, is that they're very reluctant to even help at all. And when they've sent me stuff like lists of names, their names will be spelled wrong. He'll get that, like the military was giving him wrong spelling of names to put on a stone monument, right? It's like they're just super incompetent. It's like what you were just saying. Was it incompetent? I don't know. I mean, at some point when I was covering the military so much, I said to Carilla, I'm like that, I was telling him some of the problems I face as a war correspondent, and he goes, we are our worst enemy. And I said, I can see that. It's not, because a lot of the soldiers are, the bulk were actually highly professional, but there's enough monkeys that are allowed to be in there, and they're not necessarily intentionally screwing things up. They just shouldn't be there, period. Right? They just shouldn't be there. And yet they are. And they cause nothing but trouble for the, not cleaning up the ranks, right? Here's a bunch of Roll of Honor books. Actually, it's 12 of them indexed to the Roll of Honor, and it's the U.S. Quartermaster Department Roll of Honor set of 11 Union soldiers Civil War died. It's the roll of it's 11 books volume. It's got all the Union soldiers who died. Apparently, it's a lot of books, man.
I tell you, see, it was so good, and that's writing by hand. They didn't have typewriters. That's writing by hand, sitting down there with that discipline, and we've taken away that discipline. In fact, there was a kid that couldn't read cursive. He was in a restaurant, and they had their menu in cursive. It was a fancy one, and he was at the next table, and he's like, I can't. He was talking to the girl he was with. He's like, I can't read this. It was cursive. I'm like, they don't teach kids how to read cursive anymore. Like, they can't read it. Can't read. So you can't read the Declaration of Independence. You couldn't read the Ben Franklin letter because it's like in some alien language, right? You have to depend on somebody to tell you what it says. You can't read it for yourself. To me, that's dangerous.
I can read cursive, but I couldn't read that one word for some reason.
There's always going to be that, but you could read it, right? This kid couldn't even read a menu at a French restaurant written, and it's just cursive. It was easy to me. It was easy to read. They can't do that anymore. Right. It's interesting. But this is the second one. So we fast forward now to this is the Spanish-American War, and this is operations in the Philippines, and this is amazing. It goes into the map. So every little battle and skirmish they had, they would print out a map of where they were, where they hit the what they call Filipino insurgents and all that. And they work this whole thing in there, and they have the after action reports from the lieutenant, from the sergeant, from the captain of each unit of every single day for the period of time that they went through, and they broke down the Philippines into the geographic areas where each was responsible for it. And they worked through, if somebody died of a disease, if somebody was just missing in action. One guy died of syphilis because he spent too much time in the brothels. It's all in here. And it's, and they go through the ammunition problems, and they go through logistical problems, and they look at everything. This is a remarkable, and this is just for volume 1, 1901.
1901.
Right? and it's the report at the time. So the Philippine War is still going on, the Spanish-American War and the Philippine insurgency, and they're writing this level of book while those operations are going on to the level of detail. So you can get that information and operate off of it. Compare that to now where you get, I don't know, 100 emails with nonsense on it and cut paste from, articles on pick out online. I'm like, what are you doing? So I mean, I'm trying to get
Raytheon to make me an anti-Wikipedia missile.
Oh, that would be good. Well, I think Rocket's killing it. Rocketedia is killing it right now. So it should be interesting. Oh yeah. So while he's doing that, I'm going to go here. So those were those two, and then is he back? Oh, so this one. Let me do this. So these are the green books. This is just a few of them. So we're fast forwarding now to World War II, and the United States Army and the Office of the Military Historian, which actually had a pretty robust staff back in the day, would go through and compile all of that amazing record keeping that was done in World War II. There were legions of clerks and historians that would go through. S.L.A. Marshall was the guy kind of heading it, and he had kind of power. He was able to kind of move a lot of those researchers and historians forward in the combat operations, do debriefs and AARs, record that information, and then compile it. Not recorded on a 3.5-inch floppy and Lotus notes that nobody's going to read, but in paper that people could see. And then they compile that information. If you remember the Band of Brothers, some of that information about the operations they had, they were getting debriefed almost immediately after, during the hot wash, just after the hot wash, of those actions by the historians, who would get everyone's account and then put it together so that they would have this accurate history. There's just not that done. In fact, some of the historian stuff now is done like with Michael. When he was forward with Deuce 4 and some of those other units, he was capturing information that is completely lost elsewhere. You will never get a full account of what happened compared to, say, World War II. Looks like it's back here. I was showing them the green books. These are the giant Army green books from World War II. And they have, like I said, the Band of Brothers, some of that information about the guy from the 101st, that came from guys like S.L.A. Marshall, who was the general, and he could move these guys forward and get hot washes from the units that had just been in combat, get all that information, even the soldiers, record it, and then compile it back in DC. It was a massive operation during World War II. Thousands of clerks, historians that were forward, and the topics were amazing. So after World War II, they began to take all that data, which tremendous amount of data, and organize it for lessons learned in these great books, the green books. This one, for example, is just civil affairs soldiers become governors. This is how soldiers should run countries, right? Because the U.S. had to end up doing it in Italy and France and Tunisia and the occupied areas. And so this goes through all the lessons learned that the soldiers had about what works, what doesn't, and everything like that. And I can guarantee you, this is the level that the guy just after World War II and during World War II would get about that. And then fast forward to the little books we got. It's like a magazine pamphlet with maybe, I don't know, like 40 pages or something about civil affairs, right? And then that's it. And then good luck, we're all counting on you. And then some PowerPoint that nobody really saw. But this one, like I said, it's just a phenomenal amount of information about different structures, different cultures, and how you had to interact with it and what to do through both Africa and North Africa and then into Europe. And then what were the differences? They have things like strategic planning for coalition warfare. They'll go through that. Defense of guarding the United States and its outposts. So it even shows what the United States had to do to prepare before the war for protecting itself. It goes into Panama, there's Attu, and then it shows where the America was vulnerable on the American soil for attack, like up in Alaska, right, and Hawaii, all of that. So this is kind of a good lessons learned, and the detail, like I said, on these things is absolutely phenomenal. So if you can get a hold of the green books in their actual format, I know they have them all on PDF, but the format is better because they've got maps that can be pulled out. It's just to get a lot more information on that for studying World War II studies, and then how those lessons learned apply to today. And that kind of, I think, professionalism, professional training, and professional study of in-depth into warfare and all of its aspects seems to be missing or abbreviated to such an extent. I think it's not really useful. Then the final one, there's kind of I call it the Green Book for State Department. And these are, if you're looking at before, it's the Department of State put these out. And this is the Foreign Relations of the United States. This is 1941, volume 4, the Far East. So all of the public ones records of all of the letters back and forth from the State Department to its embassies, to other embassies, various consulates are in here. And you can go down day by day and see who's writing what to whom. Now, these are excellent because if you study history and then going into the source docs, like just on the Pacific War, which is the one I'm very much fascinated with, the preparation for the war against Japan, for example, everyone now I think knows. We started at 1907. We did the full plan 1911, but this is the State Department side of it, and you can look every single day. What was a letter sent from Ambassador Grew, for example, in Japan, to the different people within the State Department? Sometimes they record that he sent stuff to the Treasury, advising about what's going on, and then match this to what the history books say, right, or the newspapers say, and you see there's a disconnect. Right, so going to the source documents is important, and they used to put these books out, which had all those source docs in there. So I can go through here, and it's like the archive because they have all those letters by date, and they've organized them in here, so you can see what was actually said behind the scenes, and then you see where the actions don't, and the rhetoric outside doesn't match what's actually going on internal to that organization and moving, and then you can see what actually is going on. And that's important because if you see that pattern back in the past, it helps you prepare for now when people are saying these things and doing these things, and you go, well, what's actually State Department doing, or actually what's this group doing, and that sort of thing. So those are the series of books that I would definitely recommend. So, the Green Books, the Rolls of Honor, the after actions from that, and then, like I said, the State Department Green Books, which are this one, which is the Department of State's Foreign Relations series, and they've got them, I believe, from the 30s up to about the 50s. And then after that was kind of, most of it's still classified. So they haven't declassified that yet. But we don't have this kind of, everything is now digital. And I've looked in the digital archives and they don't even have half of what's in here. So a lot is kind of memory hold by shifting over to digital so far. And if you're using AI to search, AI is not going to know half of this. It's only going to have what's digital and not behind a paywall or a search engine. It has to be kind of out front for it to scan. So people will do an AI search and think they've got all the answers, but it can't go into this, and it doesn't have all the information even that's digitized if it's behind a certain structure that has to sign in and do things to be able to get to it. So the problem that we have is a lot of people relying on AI for answers aren't getting the complete picture, and they're making assumptions based on, well, I have all the information. You can never have too much information. So there we go. Sorry about that. I was getting book nerdy on everybody there.
Oh, you're gonna love what I got here.
Oh, STG's got something. He's on Substack, so his comment's not showing up. He says, purposeful rewriting of history to purposeful erasure of history. Exactly. And some of it's purposeful, definitely. And by design, they don't put a lot of effort into it because they know if there's a vacuum of information, they can insert a narrative and you can't correct it because you don't have enough data to go in. So that's wrong. So absolutely, there's a memory hole being created. And I think it benefits a lot of people that want to rewrite or restructure our society in certain ways because we don't understand what actually occurred in the past, and that sort of thing. So absolutely. That's a good comment there, SPG.
This is fascinating. What I've got here. Look, check it out. I've got these two books, right? This is a huge amount of news. The back fell off of one of them. A huge amount of newspaper stories about the Spanish-American War. Oh man, it's epic. I mean, but and I think somebody made this in like his accounting book because I wish I could hold this up good. Like, so here is like it's somebody. Let me try to hold this. It won't be in the right orientation, but at least you can. I need one of those Thomas Jefferson Monticello things. You see, it's like an accounting book. I think it says 1853. Oh yeah, it's a ledger, and the other ones too. It's like a ledger, and it's got some pages of that in both of the books, and it looks like somebody's child got a hold of it at some point because they got like the drawing. You know how children like to draw their hands and stuff, and so then it yeah, William Noble. It's got some accounting, so it must be. Another one was, I think what he did was he took a ledger and he then made it repurposed the ledger for these newspaper articles. So it's because behind these newspaper articles is a ledger. Oh, wow. And it's got all this accounting in here and it's beautiful handwriting. You see, this is 1854, some ledger. And wow. I just use these gold backs as bookmarks. But look, here's one that I have it bookmarked here. It says Oh yeah, yeah. This is for the you know for the ship explosion down in Cuba.
Yeah, the Maine.
Yeah, the Maine external explosion. Sorry, external explosion. A significant statement by Senator Proctor of Vermont, just returned from Cuba. The Spanish government not implicated in the crime. Important information obtained by the senator during his stay in Havana. No mines in the harbor. Has no knowledge of court's report. Washington, March 14th, to a post. Anyway, it goes on and on. So, I mean, there's a big discussion on what happened at the Maine. And,
Mhm.
and so anyway, you can see the Spanish American War obviously was a big deal.
Wow.
And
Look at
so
that.
this whole thing is just page after page. It's an old repurposed ledger. It's two big books of this.
Wow.
And I found these. I was like, wow, you gotta be kidding me. And I got them right here now in Japan. So this is it. Book two. And again, this ledger, like some of the entries here from the actual ledger, like here's some from 1837, stuff from 1833. Yeah. So
Mm.
I mean, so he took this old ledger. So this ledger was obviously around for a long time before it even became repurposed, because the Spanish American War didn't happen for another 50 years or 80 years actually. Because
Mhm.
the Spanish American War, when did that actually break out?
So yeah,
18,
1900,
eight-
and then the
eight-
insurgency in the Philippines lasted till
but
about 1906.
Yeah, about 1899ish, right? So here we go.
Yep.
So here 18 so he's got entries in here from 1833. By the time
Wow.
this book could have been repurposed, it was already like almost 70 years old, right? So this book
Wow.
was already almost 70 years old, and then he's like, "Well, I'll just take this old book and throw these newspaper articles in it." Like here's the Spanish blockhouse. It's got all these defenses and Commodore Schley squadron. You can see somebody's kid got in here and was had the pencil going on it at times, but kid probably ended up becoming president or something. It's just got a lot of stuff like this. Yeah,
Wow.
isn't that wild?
That is a gem. Holy smokes, that is neat.
Yeah, and this is Ledger A. This one says Ledger A right
Hmm.
here, Ledger A. But again, that was for it was, and the other one must be Ledger B. Now I've got a whole bunch of books like this. These are old books, contemporaneous books, actually. Our New Possessions. The Philippines, Puerto Rico, Cuba, and Hawaii. I've got a bunch of these, man. I've got different
Mm.
from that time period. It's Our New Possessions, and it'll have
And it
like
was
here's one.
the same title was on multiple books, right? So there was like different
Oh
publishers,
yeah,
but they kept using that same
I got
title.
I got a huge amount of books that are Our New Possessions, which you can find them online, and I've got them in the other room. Actually, I walked in. I could only bring these back because there was only so much I could carry. But so here's the Virgin Islands, Our New Possessions, and the British Islands. Right, it goes on and on and on. There's a
Hmm.
whole bunch of books on it, and when you go through these books, Our New Possessions, it goes through there and it's talking about. Oh, sorry, I have this over there. They're talking about how the natives are so friendly or whatever, and they can grow coconuts here or whatever. They're actually just they're cementing the financial and economic and other relationships with those places so we can take them over, colonize them, right? And
Well, you remember
and that,
Darien?
that's
We
just
found
the
that
way it
newspaper
was.
from the 30s when they're like, "There's so much gold, the crocodile has it in his teeth." Remember that? And
Oh,
how the
that's
emperor
right.
Indian women were so beautiful, and look here they are. Remember that?
Yep. Speaking of the Darien, this is a book that I found in the Darien Gap in a remote village. I don't think this is the
That
actual
was
one. I think
Keynesian
they have the
economics,
actual.
wasn't it?
No, it's
Oh,
The Wealth of Nations.
oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
And I found it and right by the Colombian border, that the village Puerto Obaldia. For
Mm.
if you want to look that up, Puerto Obaldia, you'll see how remote that is. And it was in this place, and I asked him, "Can I keep this?" I was like, "Wow, it's amazing to see the wealth of nations out in this
See,
like
the emperor,
really
the
remote
emperor know
area."
what time it is. They know the deal. They know what they got to study.
Oh yeah, the wealth of nations.
They
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, the things that you learn going through these old books, you just don't know what you're going to find.
Mm-mm.
I've got we could go on for days and weeks and months. I mean, it's just this is like my vacation. Masako and me, some people they're like their vacation. They got to go to some place and go on the beach and sit under some coconut tree. I'm like, let's go to the old antique bookstores in Tokyo, or let's just go. I want to come right here.
Hmm.
I'm here. I'm there. You know what I mean? This is it.
Well, you guys are setting up Kenjiro House. That's going to be like a mecca for learning. I mean, you're going to have this place that'll be a destination for folks to come in and learn from these old books and kind of share information and knowledge. There it is. There he is.
There's Kenjiro. I got 2 of these, but we're going to get a big one. Yeah, Kenjiro. He was known for, and actually one of the things Kenjiro was known for in Japan was actually, being an autodidact, reading so much, and also he saved a lot of people in Japan from famine because he had warned them about a famine because he saw it coming, and then he warned them. He's like, "Don't grow rice, grow millet, and all kinds of other things." And none of the people that listened to him died from famine, actually. So after that, people wanted to hire him all the time because, you know, his 24 karat information was, well, it saved a lot of lives. And basically, you know, he didn't come and farm for them. He's just like, do this, do that, how to prepare yourself. And they did. So again, after that, he would just go around, other people would hire him, and that's why he became famous. So his statue is in Japanese schools, all over the Japanese schools, but they've been working to take these statues out of the schools because they don't want the Japanese kids. They don't want the Japanese kids to be to know that, hey, I can learn on my own, right? Because that's what Kenjiro was known for. You know, he was known for being an autodidact. He taught himself.
Oh wow,
They don't want the autodidacts. They don't want. Yeah, they don't want autodidacts. They don't want people that learn on their own. They want people that, you know, hey, eat the slop that you're given, right?
Yeah, it's sad. It's that trend. Yeah, I was talking about it earlier. I did a quick thing, and I was talking about the World War I. That whole thing was destroying a culture here in the U.S. Even remember burning Beethoven, and then I got this one, American Midnight, where he talks about that cultural change. You know, just after the Fed. So there was the Fed, and then there was the income tax, but there was a whole cultural backdrop of what they were trying to destroy, right? And the laws that were there. That were purported to be one thing, but the actual social effect was something else. And it began the foundation of a dependency model, right? Outside of your church, your family, your small social circle, right? You had to get onto a federal system, right? The federal system is the answer, right? And so that was the beginning. They were laying that organizational structure in the U.S. and they initially used the World War I, as a mechanism by which you can kind of sell that. And then World War II was against the Japanese Americans, right? Because they had social cohesion in a small group. They were able to, fund their projects internally. They didn't have to go to a Western bank, right? They could do it all internally to the community. And they were taking things and educating and elevating themselves internally. It wasn't a dependency model except on themselves. And so that culture got wiped out. And then we started wiping that out in Japan. It was put on hold, probably the Korean War, right? Because then suddenly we needed them to be efficient, to give us Jeeps and things. Honda was making subcontracting equipment for us, and we needed them as a kind of a bulwark. But it's sad to see, it's kind of returned to that dependency model to wipe out that early Showa mindset that the Japanese had. And so now I think that the third phase of that is here at home. We hit kind of that, part of that in the European side in World War I, and the American group. Now it's against Americans, and that's kind of what woke up a lot of people. It's like, wait a minute, but we reenacted this against other groups here at home. It was just, now it's against
most Americans wouldn't see it, though. Most Americans would never see it. They would.
I didn't even know about until
how would they
2 years ago, like 2020, like you said. That was that paradigm shift. It's like, how could the government, suddenly literally say one thing and completely do something else on a massive scale? And you're like, hold on a second, something's broken here, right? In other words, this is not, this model doesn't work. The information that we're going on doesn't work. It should not operate this way if it is designed as they say, and like we were taught. So what now accounts for this? You do that deep dive and you go, oh, wait a minute. Okay. And then you reset and you go, okay, what if we plug this in? What if this model is true? Let's plug this in and see if the answer, okay, that matches. And then you build it on future like you do, and you go, oh, okay, well, that matched, that works. And then when you get to about 90% of the time you're right, you're like, okay, I think I got a working model. I think we're onto something here. But most Americans will never know it. I mean, I learned a whole different history. This. I mean, when we first met, I hated Chinese communists and Germans. I just was like, ugh. And now I'm like, oh man, I still hate Chinese communists. They're still schmucks. But the Germans, I'm like, man, what the heck did we do? We literally wiped out German American culture that had been here since 1848, right after the revolutions in Europe. There was no Germany at the time, but German principalities, and they had that like you said, that self-elevating culture, right? I can learn on my own, I can do on my own. They call it Wissenschaft,
Yeah.
right? Follow the facts, and it flowered. The scientists, the Germans produced so many scientists, tremendous amounts, and then they came here, and you had that culture imprinted here. You had an independent Scottish culture in the South as well. Remember that? So the Scots could handle on their own. Leave me and mine alone. I can do my own here, right? And they would self-organize, usually around a church or a community. And then, so what do they attack? You see that they attack churches, communities, families. They break up that social cohesion structure where people can operate independently and make a dependency model on a more centralized model. And that's again and again and again. So I definitely recommend, I think you've got Burning Beethoven, right? You've got that one. So that starts.
Yeah, but I haven't read it. Yeah.
So these two kind of go. Now he goes off a little bit, not 100% after the first 10 chapters or 8 chapters. But you'll see the beginnings of that trend. And then you look at, okay, the Fed. So what happens? The Fed happens, right? They centralize banks. Then you get income tax, which creates that dependency model, right? And so how these things gradually hit, and then the regulations continue in multiple fronts to knock out that independence and knock out eventually the thought process. The education system changed. Like we're talking here, this is the sign. In other words, you can produce with hand copies. You can produce tremendous amounts of information on your own, just writing it. But now with better tools, we're shadows of that. And you look at the core concepts of how we processed information and what we looked at. You were a book nerd, went into, white when you weren't riding a horse to school and, having an Indian rebellion there against the prince.
Literally did.
So I do have to say this. So Mike took me to Winter Haven, and we're meeting all the people that knew him, and every single one of them, every time we meet him, was like, "Oh yeah, remember that time he rode the horse to school?" Like everybody in town knew about Michael Yon, who rode a horse to school, like to challenge the principal. He was dressed up as an Indian war chief, and he rode bare chested. He literally rode it. It was your sister's horse, right?
Right? That's right. Misty was the name of the horse. Yeah.
So Mike just doesn't read history. He lived history, right?
I was with my good friend Richard White, and we're still good friends. We're still great friends. We were born 3 days apart in the same hospital, so we've known each other for a while. And so Richard was my interpreter. So I came on the horse like, I'm up on the horse, big old quarter horse, and I'm just bare chest. I was wearing rabbit skins from rabbits that I had shot, and we had eaten them, and I'd made, I was really
skins. Just rabbit skins.
And I was super fit and muscular, so I was proud to do that, so the girls would see how fit I was, which worked actually. And
every insurgency starts with a guy trying to impress a girl. There we go.
Yeah, I mean that's what it comes down to. Routes and resources. Sometimes the resources are girls. And so it's like, hey, we'll fight for women. And so that's it, man.
He's not wrong.
So Richard's like, Chief Say, he's saying to the principal, he's like, Michael Yon, get down off of that horse. And I'm like, and I had a spear with little feathers hanging off of it. Not a metal spear, not a fighting thing, but sort of a spear. And I'm like, he's like, I told you to get down off of that horse. And I'm like, and Richard's like, Chief Say, and he had a scroll that we'd made with burned like Publix paper bag, unfolded. Mm-hmm. He's like, Chief Say, this ancient Indian burial ground, you must take down school and leave. Oh man. So it's funny, years later, after I got out of the Army, I was back in Winter Haven, and a guy was telling me, he goes, yeah, I went to Winter Haven High School, and he said, one time I rode a horse to school dressed as an Indian. He didn't know he was talking to the Indian.
To the guy who was the horse in the Indian.
I was like, I didn't even say anything. I was just like, okay, really? That's your story. Tell it how you want it.
Tell me more.
Tell me more. He told the exact story. I was like, do you have any idea who I am? Yeah.
That's funny.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, man. That was like a rebellion right there.
Starting insurgencies, you're perfect for it, right? You already know. You were leading it in high school.
Yeah. Well, everybody was talking his name was Mr. Stewart, John Stewart. He was pretty autocratic. That's why we were doing it. He was always like talking rough to students, and we're like, we're not intimidated by that guy. You know what I mean? Richard White, the guy that was my interpreter, again, he ended up becoming a Catholic college professor, university professor, which he is now. Very, very smart guy. And but Richard, he did something that I learned a huge lesson in. Where's my book, Danger Close? I tell that story in this book, right? Danger Close, right? The story of the horse is in here, right? That's me riding the horse to school and with Richard. And so I wrote this book, and while I was writing, and Richard White, I tell another story in here. Richard White, he a friend of his, Bill Gurley, ran for student council president, right? So Richard put all the signs around school, and you had to get like 3 teachers or something to sign off, or 5 or whatever it was, and you had to get the front desk to sign off that each candidate was a worthy candidate, like a good student and all that, good grade point average from this front office, and not a was a good student in the school. So he went to the different classes, and the teacher's like, I don't remember Bill Gurley. And he's like, no, Richard's like, Bill Gurley. He's like, 5'10", and he likes you. You know what I mean? And so he got everybody to sign off that Bill Gurley was a good, including the front office. Then it came time for the speeches. We're in 10th grade at this point. We're in 10th grade, right? So it came time for the speeches. And Richard's like, well, Bill's in the hospital. He can't give the speech, but he's written the speech and he's asked me to deliver it. So Richard comes up like, what's that movie? Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Actually, when that movie came out, people were like, hey, they made that movie about you and Richard. And I watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I was like, that is kind of our story. So Richard, he came up and he gave the speech, and he goes, Bill Gurley, can't be here, but this is what he said. Anyway, so Bill Gurley gets elected to student council president. And then for about 3 weeks, every morning, this story is in this book. So every morning for about 3 weeks, they were like, well, Bill Gurley, the chess team won and the football team won or lost or whatever. And will Bill Gurley please report to the main office? And week number 2. And will Bill Gurley, attention. If Bill Gurley is in your class, please ask him to report to the main office. Bill Gurley, report to them. Okay, and have a great day. Next day, has anybody seen Bill? Bill Gurley didn't exist, right? He didn't exist. So I learned a huge amount from Richard's coup with Bill. Fake candidate, got elected. People signed off on it, teachers, and so people had T-shirts made, Bill Gurley for president, all this stuff, right? So when you're running Obama and all this, why do you think I'm totally jumping? I'm like, Trump's not real. I know Bill Gurley. So I was writing this book. I called Richard on the phone. He was out in Kansas or something. I'm in Florida. I'm like, Richard, I'm thinking about, because Richard had read the manuscript, and I said, I'm thinking about putting the William A. Gurley Award for creative nonfiction on the book. And I said, what do you think about that? Because I'm like, maybe people will think that's fraud. So I don't want to, come off wrong with that. And he's like, oh, do it. Put Bill Gurley Award on it. So I put the William A. Gurley Award on it. I was doing this interview on an NPR in Gainesville affiliate, and the guy's like, oh, and he's interviewing me about the book, and I see that your book has won the prestigious William A. Gurley Award. I'm like, it goes on and on. So many people are like, this book really deserves that award. The only people that ever catch it, occasionally a woman. It was always women. Like one woman, she said she was reading my book and she closed it and she was crying at the end. She said she was looking at the cover, and then she noticed the award and she just burst. She went from laughing to she went from crying to burst out laughing. And on the airplane, and the people beside her are like, what's wrong with that woman? She said, because I went from crying to just laughing so hard when I saw William A. Gurley Award. And but men don't catch it. Actually, maybe I shouldn't have just told that secret. But if you read the book, and you'll know why it got the William A. Gurley Award. But there were so many nested lessons in there. So the book, this book is actually it's you can read it in many different ways. It's actually a very complex book. But it's written very simply. You might not pick up that it's actually quite complex, but it's really complex. And but only for a few people that pick up little things here and there, and they can follow it. But for most people, it's just a simple book about growing up in Florida and doing Green Beret stuff and that sort of stuff. But anyway, I learned so much from being around Richard and you. And I'm very blessed with my friends. It's like, the type of people I get to hang out with.
Masako and her clan. So you got the Masako had that group in there. So you've got an excellent circle there. It's pretty good.
Oh, you know what? Masako just came in. I should have said something. She just brought
Oh, nice.
matcha.
Is that container what her cousin made, or is that something else?
I don't think her cousin made this one. I don't know where she got, and she walked back downstairs, or I would ask her. Masako is awesome.
That's good. Yeah,
Man,
so Winter
I love
Haven was a
matcha.
good incubator. You guys had like
when-
Navy SEALs out of there, right? You had like the youngest Navy SEAL or something out of Winter Haven. And
Youngest Navy SEAL was Scott Helvenston. I played football with him. We used to work out together, and he got killed in Fallujah, actually. But yeah,
that's
I
what
mean,
caused you to go to Iraq, right?
Yeah, and another one of my Green Beret friends got killed the next day. Actually, Richard Ferguson, and in Iraq, both of them in Iraq. I went to both of their funerals. But out of our Winter Haven, there's a lot of, for some reason, it's been like a quasar of people that do really serious stuff. Like Delta guys coming out of there, a lot of Green Berets, SEALs, generals, Olympic couple like Susie Thayer. I used to swim over at her house and stuff when I was a little kid. She went to the Olympics, and Rowdy Gaines, gold medal Olympics. We all went to the same high school, professional football players and basketball players. And I don't know what it was, but a lot of people radiated out of that school. And for us, it was normal. Of course, I'll go and be a Green Beret, or of course, I'll go be a Navy. I was trying to choose which one do I want to go to, Navy SEAL or Green Beret, not like, you know what I mean? It was like, one day I was in school at the Winter Haven High School where Bill Gurley was then student council president. And, American Army helicopter lands out there on the practice football field. The main football field was down the road, and right at a National Guard armory where they have 105 howitzers, right? Big Bad Charlie. And so the name of the battery. So people in Winter Haven know what I'm talking about, Big Bad Charlie. And so Big Bad Charlie, they would shoot that cannon once at halftime of every game, right? Boom, And luckily, they never accidentally put an HE in it, but that's just the blanks, of course. But one day, we're in school, and a helicopter just lands on the football field, like, wow, let's go. And so we go out, and they turn off the engine, and the blades stop, and they're showing us the helicopter and stuff. I think it was just a recruitment thing, and I'm like, I'm recruited. Can I fly in a helicopter? You know what I mean? Take me to the base right now. You know what I mean? Bye, friends. It's like, I'm just like, take me right now, and drop me off at wherever you do that initial training stuff. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. But I mean, there was the very positive attitudes towards the military, and so that's what I grew up in. So for us, it was quite normal, very patriotic. And still weirdly remain that, despite my knowledge. I think it's baked into the firmware. Actually, interesting.
It sounds like it was an incubator, really good incubator for a lot of people for that system. That's good. But it allowed you, because you studied a lot of the books on your own, right? You were studying physics books. You were looking for truth. You were looking for that objective evidence, right? Through physics, you had the ability when things didn't match up to go, wait a minute, there's something wrong here, right? And then you had the moral courage to go, okay, I was wrong before, but let's recalibrate here and go here, right? In other words, I don't have to. I'm not tied into stuff in the past. I'm going to adjust fire and then hit the objective from there. So that's pretty good. Most people don't do that.
I was always looking for truth. Like it was and like, what is the truth? First, you have to define what's truth. You know what I mean? It's like, and which is actually not as easy to define as if you really sit down and try to figure out what is it. And I remember when I was about 10 years old, I was walking to school one morning. I was like, I actually decided I'm going to tell the truth, right? You know what I mean? I was like, I remember that walk to school. I think it was because
how old were you? You said 10? 10 years old?
About 10. And sometimes I didn't want to go to school. I mean, I liked school. I liked my friends. I liked my teachers. But sometimes I didn't want to go because I wanted to study. I mean, for me, going to school was going to hang out with the pretty girls and play football and stuff like that when I was young. And then high school. And it was always about girls and, hanging out with my friends and stuff. Because I did most of my studying at home, right? I mean, I wasn't doing very good in school, actually, because I just wanted to study physics and read the encyclopedia and that sort of stuff. But I remember one time I didn't want to go to school because I just wanted to stay home and study or go fishing or something. I don't know. And so I was like, man, I can't lie. So what I did was I turned in circles a lot. I must have been like 9 or 10. I just turned in circles and made myself sick. And then I said, I don't feel good. So basically, I tried to lawyer myself not to go to school, right? I was like, I think I still
He's not lying. He feels sick. He just didn't tell you how he feels sick.
I didn't tell you I like took a bunch of poison. I just turned in circles. You know what I mean? I just
technically, yeah, okay, he's not wrong.
Oh my gosh, I never forgot that. Yeah, but anyway, I don't remember. I think I still had to go to school, didn't I? Anyway, yeah, they can see through that crap. They know. You know, I'm just not a good liar. That's another policy. When you're not a good liar, just tell the truth.
Lester, remember that way. Just tell the truth. It makes sense.
Yeah, just tell the truth. Yep. Yeah, that's like when you look at somebody like Trump and things are like way back when Newt Gingrich called me before the first election trying to get support for Trump. I'm like, no, no. I mean, I think most people, if you get a call from somebody like Newt Gingrich, they're going to be like, "Yay, wow, Newt Gingrich, Speaker of the House." I'm like, I don't care, man. You think I'm going to, because, I can see what that guy is. I can see that he was, and through the years, I've said since way back early, that guy's a traitor. That guy's a traitor. He's a traitor. He's going to be a traitor, right? And people are like, "Oh, you got TDS." I'm like, somebody's got TDS here. And I think it's you. You know what I mean? You're the one throwing all your support at him. And then they're like, "Well, who'd you want? Clinton?" You know what I mean? It was Clinton days. And I'm like, obviously not. I'm not going to vote for Clinton. But why would you then say, since Clinton's terrible, then Trump is Saint Trump? No, obviously not. That's a logical fallacy, right? And you're just going down the wrong path. It's just, it makes zero sense whatsoever. One time, Richard White and I, the one that I rode the horse to school with, we went to a movie, and we were 17 maybe, and we go to this movie in Winter Haven, Florida, in Continental Theater, I think it was, and we're watching this movie, and it was some stupid movie, and Richard goes, "Do you like this movie?" And I'm like, "No, this is stupid." And he goes, well, we've wasted our money. Let's don't waste our time. And we walked right out. And we're like, I was like, that's why we were friends. Cause he knew about sunk costs. We were trained. We were brought up right. You know what I mean? Most people would sit there and just watch the rest of the movie because they spent the money on it, or they would get some bad food and they're like, "Well, I'm going to eat the rest of it. I know it tastes terrible and it's probably going to make me sick, but it was expensive." Richard and I, and you too. And Misako, by the way, Misako didn't get any formal logic training or anything. She was just raised up in it. Like her thinking processes are very clean. Her thinking hygiene is very, like, she intuitively knows like sunk cost, and she doesn't need she doesn't know all the words like, the basic, logical fallacy. She doesn't know all the terms for them, right? Sunk cost. She doesn't know any of those, but she knows them. She knows it. She lives it.
Her behavior manifests.
Yeah, she doesn't know the ski moves and all. She doesn't know the names of the ski moves. She just knows how to ski. You know what I mean? It's like, so that's one thing I noticed about her in the first instantly when we met. I'm like, she seems to really be wrapped tight with good thinking processes. And the thing is you don't have to go to logic school.
Where'd she? I mean, was it her dad mostly?
I've talked about that with her quite a few times. Like, I'm wondering where it came from, because your thinking processes are very clean. They're very precise. They're very like first principle oriented, right? And so it's that's very refreshing, actually. Very refreshing, because when you're in a search for what's the truth, you have to have very clean think. You have to try to remove your emotions from it. Emotions are sort of the gasoline and the brake of actions, and thinking should be the compass and the steering wheel. You know what I mean? It's like, so, once we got the steering wheel right and the compass, we got the compass going, line the steering wheel to it, and then hit the gas. You know what I mean? Then you can use your emotions to get there. But if you're just driving around emotionally, you're going to just keep running into trees and stuff like that, and so you're just not going to get very far. It's not going to be very good. You're going to end up in a war in the Middle East, and you're going to end up in a famine, and
be right where you are now.
All this stuff, yeah.
Yep, that's true.
You're gonna think it's a choice between Trump and Biden, or Trump and Kamala Harris, or Trump and or that guy Obama. You know, and when I was against Obama, people were like, "What? You're just a racist." I'm like, actually, you're just an idiot. So, you know, it's like you can't see that guy. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have used. If my grandmother heard me say that, she'd be like, "Michael, you can't use that word." It's like, she's probably hearing me. Sorry about that. But you know, it's like, you know, you can't use words like dumb and stupid. You know, it's like, you know, and I'm like, yeah, but this is a clear fraud. So, you know what I mean?
But it applies so well. What am I supposed to use?
Well, I
What word
don't
do I
know.
use?
You told me I should use the right words. That's the right word. It's like, you know
Am
what
I
I mean?
supposed to be accurate or nice? I can't be both in this situation.
Yeah, sometimes those are mutually exclusive.
I'm either going to be accurate or I'm going to be nice. I can't be both right now. Help me out. That's true. Yeah, especially in this one, because I think, and we talked about it. There was a lot of in the moving from the past now to the present. There was a huge amount of different propaganda used or different disinformation used, right? So in other words, the motivator in World War I was we're saving civilization from the barbarians. Like, the hell are you talking about, right? You know, literally. I mean, some of the propaganda, you know, pictures in there, like you had in your thing for the Spanish-American War. They had a lot of that. In World War II, it was a war for democracy, but yet our biggest ally was the Soviet Union, and no Indian could vote for the British prime minister. What democracy are you talking about, right? But you can kind of sort of see what they're going at, right? They kind of kept it within lines. But this latest one, the justification for it was so, I think, over the top. And it was so much based on, you know, it wasn't looking forward, like we need to do this for whatever. They were pulling stuff from, you know, 2,000 years ago. This is a 2,000-year-old war. We're 250 years old. What are you talking about? What 2,000-year-old war? You know, it's like,
Yeah.
Israel's like 70 something. We're 250 years old, and you're saying it's a 2,000-year-old war? What are you talking about? So I mean, it was so over the top, but it was designed specific. Once you analyzed it, it's designed specifically for that 7 to 9 million Americans that are that evangelical dispensationalist group. And it's funny because you notice how that caught on like wildfire. We talked about that 4 or 5 years ago, right? You know, where this thing came from, right? This evolution of that idea is about 160 years old,
Right.
right? And we talked, and nobody else knew that. And you know, you were out there saying, "Hey, there's a difference. There's Zionism and Judaism." But people are just like, "Oh no, that's impossible." And you even said, what, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, you know, here, you know, the irony is that Israel's bombing Jews in Iran, right? And people could not figure that out. And then this morning, the synagogue got hit in Iran, right?
Yeah, you sent that this morning.
Yeah.
And it's
like,
very clear that the Zionists actually are attacking Israel itself. And actually, some of the Israelis have started to notice, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like, who's
ship.
actually attacking us on some of these? Look, when you're talking about some of the, you know, basically atrocity porn, I've got a huge section on atrocity porn, Indian horrors. This is a whole genre, Indian horrors. There's many that have this title, just like there's many that have, you know, our new possessions title, right? So I mean, there's whole genres that are our new possessions, or, you know, let me see. These are originals, by the way. These are very old books. They were just very well kept. This one's 1891.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are nice.
Yeah. And yeah. And so these are, I mean, there's whole genre, like the Indian horrors is, it's a whole genre. I mean, if you look online for old books on Indian horrors, I don't think you're going to be able to read them all. You'd have to like take a couple of years off to read them all. You know what I mean? But they're fascinating to look through. You were actually asking me a couple of weeks ago, I think, or maybe a month or two ago, about Townsend Harris, the first ambassador here in Japan. I've got some of his stuff too, right? By the way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
because I know you got Commodore Perry's surveys.
I got them in the other room. I was just looking at them the other day. Man, those are works of art. And you know, keep in mind, he was doing that, right? You know. Somebody says, "How flat is the Earth?" I don't know, man. I tell you what, though. I tell you what. Not to go into that, but that's a fascinating topic. It is. It is. But the Commodore Perry thing. When you look at the whole how everything's going, Manifest Destiny, which I've got the painting printed out actually in the other room, and it's the Manifest Destiny, the American Progress painting from 1872, actually was made the same year that Seward was doing that reconnaissance down in Panama. and I've
Hmm.
got his original study as well. I'm going to rearrange the library when we open Conjuro House, but how to organize the library. There's a having a collection of books, but how you organize the library it can be organized in different ways,
Mhm.
as you know. And so I've been putting a lot of thought in how should it actually be organized. And actually, you should just come over with me sometime and spend like a week and look at it yourself, because this is, I'm going to reorganize it. And how should it be done? I mean, I've got a whole section on Ireland, for instance. But should Ireland be with Ireland, or should some of the Irish books be with a famine section, right? Or should
Mm.
it should be chronological on an evolution of this process, right? Like the old maps and the old globes and all this stuff. The oldest globe I've got is a 1494. It's the Erdapfel. It's the
Whoa.
oldest existing globe. Yeah, it's in the other room. You want to see it? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah. So I would probably be the last person to ask on that. Well, so my library, so I'll organize by topic. So whatever my project is, I'll organize it by the topic. But then when I'm not doing that, I'll try to do it by geographical region. But then the next time I'll do it with chronology. So I'm not have an extensive like Michael has. That would be too much to reorganize it. But I'll at least set aside there's a working area, and in that working area I can line up about 20, depending on the thickness, about 20 books in that one working area, and then from that I can pull out depending what it is. But generally it's geography and topic. So intelligence studies is separate, but then I've got the Pacific War is a huge one, and then next to that's Japan, so it feeds into it. But I think I've reorganized my library in the last, at least since COVID, probably 4 or 5.
Can you see this?
Oh, wait a minute, let me pull you back up here. Holy moly! Oh, that's
Yeah.
and there's Columbia. So there's the
Yeah.
Miss Columbia.
Yeah, I had it printed very large on anyway, but anyway, this is actually a very complex picture. But anyway, it's too big for that. We'll have to go over this painting sometimes. Just we should sometime just for like 15 minutes, just pull up that painting and go over it. But in any case, the Erdapfel. That's what I actually went to get, and then I saw that and I grabbed it. But the Erdapfel. I mean, this is actually only a couple hundred years old, but this globe.
That's not a reproduction. That's an original, right?
No. This is it's a couple hundred years. The original is like 1494. They're not really sure, but they call it the Erdapfel. Erdapfel in Germany and in Austria, southern Germany, and in Switzerland. The Erdapfel means potato. Actually, Erd means earth, and Apfel means apple. So earth apple somehow means potato. So anyway, so the Erdapfel, the potato, the earth apple, is this is a globe from 1494. So this would have been around the time, but this is a reproduction a couple of years old. But this one is but this one doesn't have America on it, right? It doesn't have America on the globe. So it's quite fascinating, right? It's quite fascinating. You look at Persia and here and all this, it's all, it was that, Africa is kind of not really looking good. It's funny. Back in those days, by the way, or at least, a little bit later than that, they were calling Arabia, that southern part, where Yemen is now, they used to call that Happy Arabia. They called it Arabia Feliz. Yeah, they called it Arabia Feliz. Arabia Feliz. And anyway, and they call it, and sometimes in some of the old maps you can see it says Happy Arabia. But this whole globe, you got to keep in mind. So this is a replica. It's a couple hundred years old, but it's a replica of the oldest existing known globe, the Erdapfel. Wow. And so from 1494. And yeah, it's quite fascinating because, again, keep in mind back then people didn't know how to navigate very well. You know what I mean? It was the map making is, pretty primitive by our standards today. And so, we didn't even know that America existed when this globe was, well, they just had recently ran into it and thought that Cuba was Japan, that sort of thing. Slightly off. But, this is, but it's really good for if you have children to have globes. They should be all over the place. Everywhere you look around my house, you can't look anywhere without seeing a globe, right? They're all over the place. It's like, hey, play ball with a globe, It's like, it should be playing on the floor on a big map. Go to Kenya. Your lunch is at Kenya.
That'd be a good way on that. Stephen V saying that for your system, do an index card system, old school and electric resilient. So if you're going to catalog it, make sure it's in paper file rather than electronics.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. And just do the, in reality, what you need to do is the Dewey Decimal System, right? I mean, they already had the right system, right?
They've already figured out a couple hundred years, just to go with that one. Yeah, that was from Stephen
Yeah.
V. I think he's on your side too.
Oh, is he? Oh, his comments are here. I don't see him. Let me see.
Oh no, his are on Substack, but I think he's also a member of your Substack on that one.
Oh, thank you.
YouTube,
yeah, thank you very
YouTube
much.
comments show up.
Oh, I can't see any of the comments. I can't see.
It's a weird with the system I've got. The YouTube comments and the X comments will show up here, but the Substack won't. I have to look at my phone for Substack, so I can't pull them up on the screen, which is nuts.
When it comes to learning, knowing how to read a book is important, and Al knows how to read a book. I mean, like, it's funny that you never read the book How to Read a Book, because when I first saw how you read a book, I was like, I read the book.
I missed the basics. I feel bad.
I didn't even say it because it seemed common sense that you had studied how to read a book, because I was watching how you read a book. And
it was from Dad. Like I said, I watched Dad. He taught me how to read, and then he would write in the margins, like debating and arguing with the author. And I'm like, okay, that's what you do.
I would talk with your dad for hours, man. Your dad was brilliant. I mean, unbelievable. I mean, he's the one when he first said to me, organizational structure dictates outcome. I was like, stop. It's like, and then we just talked about that for a while, because that was like a subject, like, let's go down this road. You know what I mean? Actually, when I say it to most people, because I say it all the time, organizational structure dictates outcome, a few people light up on it immediately, but most people don't quite grasp it. So you have to kind of ease into it, because it's a very important concept. But you and I have talked before. We need a simpler way of putting it that more resonates, that more pops off the page. Like, all fish don't fit well in the same aquarium. That pops off the page. People can see it, right? And so you and I together still haven't come up with a way. Maybe somebody watching this will come up with a way of organizational structure dictates outcome. Because how the machine is made. Is it going to be a clock, or is it going to be what? That's what's it going to be. And is it going to tell the right time if it's a clock? And so we need a phrase that people, because the strong usage of language is it's vital. It's vital. That's what all these old people talk about. I mean, the use of the precise use of language is very, very important. Actually, I noticed the way that I speak and the way that I write compared to a lot of the older people, they would look at me probably as savage level. Actually, I think, you know what I mean? Because I see the way that, like Ben Franklin and those kinds of people, they had very clean, good thinking processes.
Well, their audience was different too. It's hard. I noticed, because I went through some old notebooks like 2 months ago, and 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I wrote differently than I do now, because online you have to have brevity. Social media, right? You do these little short posts. So we literally talk in sound bites now when we type or we write. And long form, until Substack came on, long form online just didn't exist. It was very difficult. And then some people can't read that long. Everything is video now, right? That's why we do this in video. We don't write. People don't read a lot. It's a diminishing, whereas before a lot more people read. Right. In America in the 19th century and 20th century, early 20th century, people read a lot. Japan reads a lot, right? So you have that ability and you have to do it. But now the literacy, the endurance of people to be able to sit there and read a book that's not emotional, like you said, like a Harlequin romance or something, that's kind of gone away. Like I said, you look at something like this, written 90 years ago, and it's very dense. It has a lot of information in there, but that's what the market was, right? You could write something like that. Now, they put it in a tiny little format, and it's chopped up sentences. So you almost have to write for the crowd, otherwise you get left behind. And so the language changes online, which is kind of sad.
One thing, and Misako wants to go for a walk while it's still sunny.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of which, we were going for a walk. Not yesterday, it rained hard, but the day before we were going for a walk, and there was this old lady, maybe 90. She could barely stand up. She had her arm was in a new sling, and another lady, which must have been in her 70s, was trying to, they could barely get down the road. And so we were walking and we stopped, and Misako said, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" And the lady's like, "Oh, we're walking back from the hospital. We couldn't get a taxi." And they didn't have a phone.
Oh.
So yeah, so she's like 90. She could barely stand up. And Misako said, "Do you want me to go get the car?" Which was a long ways away. And they're like, "Oh, thank you." They started crying. They were so thankful.
Oh,
So
my goodness.
Misako, I stayed with them, and Misako went and got the car and brought them. And so we took them home, and it was like 2 miles, man. They could barely, yeah. That concerns me actually, because I'm like, man, they couldn't. I mean, how's it going to be when these inevitable issues hit? They already couldn't get a taxi, don't have a phone, and this is Japan, man. You know what I mean? This is yeah,
Wow.
and it's something we have to think about. You need to take inventory of the neighbors that may need assistance as this goes on, because I mean, I don't know how they would have made it home. The sun was going down, that sort of stuff. The reason I thought of that is because we're about to go for a walk. And but let me say one more thing. When it comes to teaching, like, you're a very good teacher. As you know, what are the principles of being a good teacher and learning is, one is reading, reading a lot, and writing privately, and just write to you don't have to share it with anybody, and then doing like playing football or going rock climbing or catching fish or whatever you're going to do, and just do it. And and uh and and uh and then starting to teach, right? When you start and going places, like, when you came down to Panama for more than a month, and we went through the Panama Canal and all that stuff, and we're reading a lot. We were reading The Path Between the Seas. We had George McMillan down there, the geostrategic thinker, the grand strategy thinker. He was down there, and just a lot of stuff. And then you start to teach. And I remember when I was a kid, the teachers would always say, "You're going to really learn when you start to teach," because that's when other people are going to find the holes in your knowledge for you, right? And they're going to ask you questions that you don't know the answers for, but then you'll, over time, raise to the higher level, and you'll become a good teacher. Because the most important thing that we can do is be good parents and good teachers, right? Being a good teacher is extremely important, because if you're a good teacher, then you can teach people to help themselves, and that increases our group resilience.
That's very true. It's actually, that's probably something that's getting lost now, is the group cohesion, right? And teaching each other and helping each other with the skills that they've got. And that's why I like your concept of the Kinjiro house, right? Folks get together and you share that information, and through that, teaching everybody else the skill sets and kind of the paradigms that they come with. I think that's helpful. And then doing that within your neighbors, because that's been destroyed in America. Remember, that whole process has been taken out, where you used to do that. That was inherent, right? Farm co-ops and groups that would work together naturally and help each other and teach each other, teach the next generation. That's been pulled away, right? The school system, the way it's designed, pulls parents out of that process, and it's accelerated over the years. They're pulling parents out of that. I think we sent you the videos of the kids are in, doing the homeschool stuff, right? The grandkids and all that, because public school has removed the parents' ability to do that. And that is a massive bond for grandparents to do that. Like, you learn from your grandfather, he's teaching you, and he's probably learning just as much as he's teaching you. Like, oh, that didn't work. Michael just got in trouble. Let me try something else.
Yeah. And I always thought I was such a good athlete, because I'm competing against other kids my age. But then I started to dig a well with my grandfather. I'm like, man, I'm so strong compared to those other kids my age. I'm like a monster compared to them. But then my grandfather, I'm like dying, man, do all the work that we would do together.
Oh, we didn't know. My dad, when you were meeting my dad, he had prostate cancer at that moment. I think it was stage probably 3 or 4, but by the time he knew, it was stage 4 already. But he had set up that retaining wall. I don't know if you went over his house, that giant retaining wall.
Stephen V said, by the way. I want to, but let's get back to that. But finish what you're saying. But I want to say, go ahead.
No, but yeah, the older generation, I mean, they put us to shame. They no gym membership, but they literally could build barns and houses and retaining walls and wells, and like it's hard work.
Oh yeah, let's work on the roof in the middle of the summer and practically die. You know what I mean? It's like, man, by the time I got to basic training, I'm like, this is a joke. It's a joke.
Exactly. Yep. But yeah, Stephen V, that's part of what Stephen V wrote. He said 4 stages: learning, unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, unconscious competence, like learning to tie shoes. The first one is the hard one. When you don't know what you don't know. Sometimes this can be fatal, like the first few guys that invented dynamite before Alfie didn't blow up the lab.
Right.
And then
Forensic learning.
yeah, there it is. Like Edison, you were doing the bomb boys, right? So Edison was kind of learning as he went. It's like, well,
That's right.
if you're lucky, you might continue the lesson the next day. If you're not lucky, well, somebody else might learn it from you after they pick your pieces up.
Forensic engineering. Forensic, many lessons have been learned from the bridge that didn't work again.
Yep. That's very true. Well, thank you very much for coming on board. This has been fun, boy. We're here been 3 hours. Look at that, 2 hours and 59 minutes.
Wow. Wow. I told Masako I'd be down in 30 minutes or an hour.
Oops. Well, apologize to her. I'm very, very, very sorry for that.
All right.
So yeah.
Long-haired General. All right.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate it. We'll do this again. And hopefully I'll go over to Japan to Kenjiro House and get to like peruse your books, because that's an amazing collection.
Yeah, I think you're gonna love it. All right, Al. I'll talk with you later.
All right, thanks, boss. Bye. All right, so actually it was really good. Yeah, 3 hours there. So a lot of good stuff in that one. But the main thing that kind of take away from that, the main theme of those 3 hours were, the print books are absolutely necessity. Going over a lot of the old information. There's a lot of old information with the grandparents that gets lost after about 3 generations. And we don't learn that, or don't sit at the feet of that older generation at our peril. And that's a problem with that. A+ interview from Pedro Moss. Thank you, sir. And one of the things that, the society has destroyed when they destroy the family cohesion is that continuity, right? So the grandparents are really good about teaching the grandkids, if the grandparents are good, not if they were, drugged out hippie somewhere, but basically if they had to go through a life experiences, they learned it. And if they get the good contact time with their grandkids, they can bequeath those lessons learned. And then there's a lot more information in the older books actually than modern books. There's a memory hole actually from about 1990 onward, because we put things on electronic mediums that we can't read anymore. 3.5-inch disc, a 5.25-inch floppy. I can't read it. Who has Lotus Notes on a computer that has Windows, 3.11 anymore? It's just not there. So it's a lot of information that's missing from that we lose at our peril, and we're falling into traps that were avoidable if you have the correct information about what went before. Some of it is unintentional, like we said, with the Gulf War, with the Gulf War and onward. When we go to technology, we lose the ability to retain that information because it gets corrupted over time. If you have paper printouts of things, you retain that as long as the paper lasts, which could be 100 years or more, right? There's books that he's got in his collection of about 200 plus years. It's still there. I can't read a disc unless without special equipment that was written 15 years ago. You just can't do it. Right? Without a special cable, you can't even charge up MP3 players from 10 years ago. So the technology has created a memory hole unintentionally, but then there have been intentional erasures of memory. And part of that was structural. And we went through 3 phases of it in the United States just in the 20th century. And it seems to be continually going on, and it's accelerating. So we have to be cautious of that. And so keep that in mind. We're going to go ahead and cut it now from there. Thank you, everyone, for kind of joining in on this one. If you have any questions, I'm going to repost this up on Substack. Please feel free to go over to Michael's Substack. He's over at X at Michael Young. He's on Substack also as Michael Young. I think it's a Big Honey, but it's actually Michael Young on both. And he puts out probably twice a week now. He's putting out videos on there with really good information currently. If you have any topics that you'd like to look at, please feel free to send those to me over on my Substack. That's a primary means of communication. And we'll get to it as soon as we can. If you want to see Michael back, please let us know. And then actually that's about it. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thanks to all the subscribers in there. We've had a tremendous amount of growth here on that. And I do apologize for not getting on. As I said, my day job is now a private investigator. So sometimes I'm out and about. I couldn't even go on this morning because I had the weird hair dye that bleeds out when it gets rained on, and then beard growth. But I shaved and washed my hair, so I at least can come on the TV now. But when we can get on, we'll try to get the information out there to you on that. There's a lot happening pretty fast, and there's a lot of information that could be make more sense now if you look at the past in a certain paradigm, and a reevaluation of World War I and II and the road to those wars and what occurred during those wars, the cultural shifts that were kind of baked into that, I think would go a long way to kind of explaining what's going on now in some way. And we'll probably talk about that a little bit later. So thank you again, everyone. Have a great night. Be safe, and we will see you probably next week.